Chapter 1777. Sun Mingyue frowned and stared at him in dissatisfaction. Chu Li sighed and said, "You don't have to say it. I've already guessed it. It's all the enlightened masters and celestial beings who want to deal with me, right?" Sun Mingyue was about to nod. Chu Li quickly waved his hand and said, "Don't move." Sun Mingyue smiled and shook her head. "Aren't you being too careful?" Chu Li scoffed. "There's no harm in being careful. Those people from the Grandmaster aren't easy to deal with. They're waiting for me to make a mistake. I can't give them that chance." "All right." Sun Mingyue smiled. "I won't say a word. If he did not speak, it would be a silent agreement. Based on the tacit understanding between them, Chu Li would understand." Chu Li smiled and nodded. He naturally understood. Li Meng, who was watching from the side, was still confused. Every time she stood next to the two of them, she felt like she had become stupid. She could hear everything clearly, but nothing seemed right. Chu Li sighed and said, "The Grandmasters are really ruthless this time. They're treating me like an Azura." Sun Mingyue smiled, but said nothing. Chu Li said, "But I'm guessing it won't be that effective. Since the Outland has issued such a decree, only one celestial being has come to die." He shook his head and laughed. Sun Mingyue also chuckled. With Chu Li's reputation, how could the enlightened masters make a move against him with just a decree from the Grandmaster? When he was in the Grandmaster's boundary, he was already able to kill enlightened masters and intimidate most of the enlightened masters. Now that he had become an enlightened master, there were a total of 8 enlightened masters in the world. None of them would come to their deaths, even if they joined forces. Unless they were like Song Jifan, who had a grudge against Chu Li, or if they were confident, they would not dare to look for him. Or they could be like those enlightened masters in the Imperial Mausoleum who could not see the light of day. As long as they could kill Chu Li, they could truly become enlightened masters and enter the Outland. For the latter, this was a great temptation. Just like the prisoners in prison, if they could perform meritorious deeds, they would be able to obtain freedom. If they wanted to perform meritorious deeds, they would have to take great risks. Even so, there would definitely be people who would risk everything out of desperation. Chu Li's expression suddenly changed as he looked up at the sky. The omniscient mirror had already seen the outside world through the roof of the temple. Dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky, quickly gathering together. In the blink of an eye, they formed a huge black umbrella that covered the Light Palace. But because most of the light in the Light Palace was reflected from the icy peaks of the Light Peak, it covered the sky above the Light Palace, but did not make the Light Palace dark. In a flash, Chu Li grabbed Sun Mingyue's wrist and disappeared from the Divine Light Basilica. Within the Light Palace, Li Meng was dumbfounded. In a flash, the two of them appeared at the top of an ice mountain on the Great Light Peak. Sun Mingyue gently pulled her hand away. "Li Meng is inside." Chu Li said, "If you want her to be safe, you'll have to stay away from her. Don't worry." He pointed at the dark clouds that looked like umbrellas. The canopy formed by the dark clouds quickly moved toward the ice peak where they were. In an instant, it was above them, and the entire ice peak darkened. Sun Mingyue frowned. "Am I breaking the heavenly rules?" "Yes." Chu Li sighed. "They're really overbearing. You didn't even say anything." Sun Mingyue raised her head and stared at the dark clouds. Crack! A bolt of lightning appeared in the clouds. It was as if a zigzag crack had appeared in the clouds. Boom! Amidst the explosion, the bolt of lightning instantly struck Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue lightly met it with a punch. Her movement seemed slow, but it was actually extremely fast. The Divine Light Fist blocked the bolt of lightning. The bolt of lightning suddenly flashed and fell to the side. The Divine Light Fist came from the Divine Light Flame. It was an extremely strong and yang energy. It was similar to the yang and yang energy of lightning. When the two collided, they did not directly collide. Instead, they began to fuse. The power of lightning was the core of heaven and earth. The Divine Light Flame was nothing compared to it. However, because of the fusion, the lightning acknowledged her and stopped attacking. Crack! Boom! Another bolt of lightning struck. Sun Mingyue threw another punch. The lightning was deflected again. Chu Li clapped his hands in admiration. He did not expect the divine light fist to be so powerful and useful. It could actually offset the power of lightning, deceive it, and evade its power. Crack! Boom! The lightning struck again. The divine light fist struck again, and the lightning was deflected again. After 6 more lightning strikes, the dark clouds dispersed and light returned to where they were. Sun Mingyue heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She did not expect the divine light fist to be able to deflect the lightning. It was only after she knew that Chu Li was attacked by lightning that she came up with a countermeasure. If she was in the same situation, she could help him. However, she thought of the divine light fist. After experimenting, it was actually effective. Chu Li frowned as he looked up at the sky. He did not feel like he had just survived a disaster. "What's wrong?" Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li sighed. "Be careful. Isn't this considered a punishment?" Sun Mingyue asked. She did not tell Chu Li herself. A light punishment was enough. An ordinary enlightened master might not have been able to withstand the lightning earlier. The punishment was not light. Chu Li shook his head. He activated the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight skill again. Then, he used the nature restoration manifestation. The 3 combined and stared at the sky. He used the Grandmaster as his opponent. He used the 3 to predict how it would attack. He did not know if it was effective. However, when he saw Sun Mingyue's ingenious move, he had an idea and used the same move. His expression changed, and he pushed Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue was caught off guard. She flew more than 10 feet away. Chu Li used Sun Mingyue's counterforce to fly backward. The 2 flew in opposite directions. They were now more than 10 feet away from their original position. Bang! The ground they were standing on suddenly exploded. It was as if a fist had landed. However, the fist was huge. It was 10 times the size of a normal person. It formed a pit that was a foot deep. They were on an ice peak. It was an unmelted ice peak. The ice here was harder than rocks. It could punch a foot deep. The fist force was shocking. This fist force was invisible. It came from the Grandmaster. It was invisible, but had substance. It was impossible to defend against. Bang! Sun Mingyue moved, and another fist mark appeared under her feet. Bang, 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 bang. A series of fist marks appeared everywhere Sun Mingyue was. Every time Sun Mingyue teleported, the fist force would follow. In a short while, there were more than 20 fist marks on the ground. It was as if there was no end to it. Sun Mingyue suddenly punched. Bang! Her body lowered as if it was going to crush her. Chu Li flashed and put his hand on her shoulder. The Supreme Titanium Supreme Scripture circulated on its own. The 2 became one. The fist force that she received was transmitted to his body at the same time. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture circulated and deflected the fist force. The 2 flew more than 200 feet away. Bang! Another fist mark pressed down. Sun Mingyue punched again. The fist force collided and the ice around them exploded. However, she stood firmly in place. The combined force of the 2 was 4 times their own. The power of this punch was shocking. It was able to disperse the fist force of the Grandmaster. There was no more fist force. Sun Mingyue did not dare to relax. Her body was tense. Chu Li's expression changed. He pushed her again. A white light fell and shrouded Sun Mingyue at a speed that she could not dodge. Chapter 1778. Sun Mingyue was shocked. When the white light fell, she felt her heart palpitate. She knew that this was a force that could threaten her, but she could not move as if the space around her was locked. Like a rock, she was pushed away by Chu Li's push. She could only watch as the white light landed on Chu Li's body. Then, as if it had a life of its own, it desperately squeezed into Chu Li's body, trying to enter his body. Chu Li's body expanded as he formed a seal with his hands and shouted, "Moo!" The surrounding air seemed to be stirred by his shout, like ripples appearing on the surface of a calm lake. After this shout, the white light flashed and continued to drill into his body. It would not stop until it reached its goal. Chu Li continued to change his hand seals and sat cross-legged on the extremely cold ice. His body flashed with golden light. Sun Mingyue quickly sat cross-legged behind him and placed her palms on his back. Immediately, the supreme titanium scripture began to circulate, and the power of his indestructible body of titanium increased. Chu Li wanted to use the power of the indestructible body of titanium to resist the power of Outland. Unfortunately, the effect was not strong enough. Even though the indestructible body of titanium was strong, it could not stop this strange power. This strange power was more like spiritual energy and was not aggressive. Although it was trying to drill into his body, it was not to hurt him. It was attracted by the inner energy of the supreme titanium scripture. Chu Li frowned, and his frown deepened. Outland was not to be underestimated. It could target his weakness. This inner energy was not only attracted by the supreme titanium scripture, but also by the spiritual energy of the spirit beast heart technique. The two forces in his body were attracting it. Even the indestructible body of titanium could not stop it because the indestructible body of titanium was activated by the supreme titanium scripture. With Sun Mingyue's help, the supreme titanium scripture became stronger and more attractive to it. It drilled into him faster. After a while, the light completely drilled into Chu Li's internal organs. Boom! A loud sound rang in his ears, and the void in his mind trembled. Then, the omniscient mirror in his mind darkened, as if it was not as bright and flawless as before. As the omniscient mirror dimmed, he had a strange feeling as if there was a gap between him and heaven and earth. He was himself, and heaven and earth were heaven and earth. He slowly opened his eyes and understood what had happened. Sun Mingyue stopped and asked what happened. She could sense that something was wrong with Chu Li. It was as if he had become much dimmer. He was no longer as dazzling and captivating as before, like a pearl covered in dust. Chu Li smiled bitterly. I've fallen from the enlightened master's boundary. He's not a heavenly god anymore. Sun Mingyue frowned. Chu Li nodded slowly. Damn it! Sun Mingyue pursed her lips and looked up at the sky. She knew that this attack was meant to hit her, but Chu Li took it to save her. If not for Chu Li, she would have fallen to the enlightened master boundary. Chu Li sighed. What a good move. Is fate so unchangeable? He had predicted that Sun Mingyue would suffer this attack and fall from the enlightened master's boundary to the grandmaster's boundary. He did not expect that she would not be able to escape this punishment in the end. From this point of view, it was very difficult to change fate. But now, he was the one suffering in her place. From his point of view, fate could be changed. His thoughts raced as he tried to sort out the cause and effect relationship between all of this. Sun Mingyue saw that he was lost in thought and frowned. You're still thinking about something else at a time like this. Chu Li smiled. Since things have come to this, there's no point in talking about it. Can you think of a way to recover? Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li replied, This seems to be a seal that has cut off my connection with the spiritual energy of the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster must have a way to recover, but they won't be able to help me break the seal. Chu Li had delivered himself to the Grandmaster's boundary. How could they possibly break the seal? They were hoping that he would never become an enlightened master. Sun Mingyue frowned. There must be a way, right? She was very confident in Chu Li. Chu Li shook his head. I can't use the supreme titanium scripture now either. I've lost most of my martial arts. I'm not even as good as when I was a Grandmaster's boundary. Back when he was a Grandmaster's boundary, he was able to dominate the world and was not afraid of enlightened masters because of the supreme titanium scripture. Then you should stay here, Sun Mingyue said slowly. Chu Li smiled. I'm a juicy piece of meat that everyone wants. Staying at the Great Light Peak will only cause trouble for the Holy Church. Forget it. No way, Sun Mingyue said firmly. Chu Li asked, Why do you have to make things difficult for yourself? Aren't you the same? Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li was speechless. The two of them stood at the top of the Great Light Peak and looked at the surrounding icy peaks that were crystal clear under the sunlight. It was magnificent. Chu Li could not help but exclaim, I didn't notice how beautiful the Great Light Peak is. You've been cultivating in a hurry. Everything is done in a hurry. Naturally, you have no time to appreciate this scenery, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li had always been fast and precise. Whether it was cultivating or doing things, he might look calm and composed, but it was just a facade. He had been cultivating in a hurry and rushing on the road to becoming an enlightened master. That was why he could become an enlightened master on his own. Unfortunately, he had to drop out of the enlightened master's boundary because of her. When she thought of this, she felt inexplicably upset. The two of them stood at the top of the Great Light Peak for a while, admiring the scenery that they had never paid attention to. Chuli gradually calmed down. It was not a big deal to drop out of the enlightened master's boundary. He could just cultivate again. Hee, we finally found him. Suddenly, a cold laugh was heard. We're really lucky. Another voice followed. Two celestial beings appeared in the sky and looked down at the two of them. Finally, their eyes fell on Chuli. They shook their heads and said, "He's nothing much. I thought he was a monster with 3 eyes and 2 noses. If that's the case, let's cut the crap and kill him first." "All right, let's kill him first. He really became a grandmaster. Chuli, we'll accept this credit." The two of them did not wait for Chuli to speak. They suddenly turned into 2 rays of light and shot toward Chuli. Sun Mingwe stepped forward and threw a punch. When the 2 great light fists met the two of them, their bodies shone brightly. The power of the great light fists was shocking, and the two of them seemed to be struggling. Although they knew that this was the Holy Church of Light's territory and that enlightened Master Sun Mingwe was here, they did not care about a woman, so they did not care. At this moment, the two of them realized that they were wrong. This Sun Mingwe was more powerful than they had imagined. Sun Mingwe threw another punch with each of her hands. The light around the 2 celestial beings shone brighter. The two of them suddenly screamed and fell to the ground. The power of the god punishing Thundersword was shocking. It pierced through the 2 celestial beings' defense and killed them immediately. The light shone brightly and then dissipated. After the light dissipated, there was nothing. The 2 celestial beings had disappeared as if they had escaped. Sun Mingwe looked at Chu Li in confusion. Chu Li said calmly, "Their souls have been destroyed." Sun Mingwe's eyes focused and slowly nodded. "That's good too. It could be considered a deterrent." Her expression changed slightly as she stared at Chu Li's face. Chu Li's face was slowly changing. He had aged for more than 10 years. If she was not very familiar with Chu Li, she might not have noticed. Chapter 1779. Chu Li also felt that he was aging. He touched his face, shook his head, and sighed. "I still managed to get it back." Back then, he used the heaven-killing tactic to consume too much of his lifespan. After stepping into the enlightened mastery's boundary, his lifespan increased by a few hundred years, and he regained his youth. As he fell from the enlightened mastery's boundary, his lifespan decreased again. He did not have as long a lifespan as an enlightened master. If he did not transform his body when he became an enlightened master and greatly increased his lifespan, he would have died by now. After becoming an enlightened master, he used up another 200 years of his lifespan to deal with the spirit lion. He counted on his fingers and realized that he did not have much time left. He only had half a month left. If he could not become an enlightened master within 15 days, he would definitely die. By then, he would be in a terrible situation. He would probably become a target in the Outland, and it would be difficult for him to make a comeback. What happened? Sun Mingwe frowned. Chu Li smiled. "Nothing. I need to hurry up and recover my enlightened mastery." "Of course," Sun Mingwe said. "Do you have an idea?" Chu Li shook his head. "I need to think about it, but I'm afraid I won't have the chance." Sun Mingwe frowned. At that moment, 3 figures appeared in the void again. They were all middle-aged men in blue robes. Their eyes were bright and cold like ice without any emotion. Chu Li sighed. "Azura." He did not wait for the 3 to speak and thrust out 3 god-killing thunderswords. Bam, bam, bam. The 3 middle-aged men in blue robes flew out. Chu Li held Sun Mingwe's hand and immediately activated the supreme titanium scripture. 3 golden lights flashed in the sky and landed in front of his palm, forming 3 Vajra palms. The 3 Vajra palms hit each of the middle-aged men in blue robes. As soon as the Vajra palms landed on them, their bodies glowed red like blood. The Vajra palms used the red light as fuel and became stronger. They slowly passed through the red light and landed on their bodies. Their flesh quickly melted and exposed their bones, turning them into 3 skeletons. Sun Mingyue suddenly remembered that Chu Li mentioned that the Vajra palms could restrain Azura. It seemed like it was true. She did not hesitate and used the Vajra palms. Her Vajra palm energy was not as refined as Chu Li's. Although Chu Li could not obtain spiritual energy from the Outland, he could absorb the inner energy of the supreme titanium scripture through Sun Mingyue. The two of them were like one person. Although they both had the same supreme titanium scripture's inner energy, his palm technique was purer and more powerful. Sun Mingyue sent an Azura flying with a diamond palm. Chu Li quickly said, "I'll do it." Once it was sent flying, it would not be able to withstand the full force of the palm. Thus, it was possible to reduce the damage of the Vajra palm through distance. Sun Mingyue cast a sidelong glance at him and did not attack again. Chu Li followed up with another 3 Vajra palms. The red light on the bodies of the 3 Azuras completely dissipated under the devouring of the Vajra palm. Then, their bodies collapsed, and the red light suddenly appeared. It was so dazzling that one could not look at it directly. The red light suddenly disappeared, and the 3 hearts of Azura appeared. Then, 3 beams of red light descended from the sky, and the 3 hearts of Azura disappeared. Chu Li shook his head. Sun Mingyue turned to look at him and said with a smile, "Whether or not you become an enlightened master has little effect on your strength. The key is still my lifespan." Chu Li shook his head and said, "Without my lifespan, I don't dare to use the heaven-killing technique at all, and I can't use the Supreme Diamond Scripture either. It's all thanks to you." When he became an enlightened master, he obtained the Thunder Orb. With the help of the Thunder Orb, the power of the God-slaying sword increased greatly and became the God-slaying Thunder Sword. Even if his boundary regressed, the Thunder Orb did not disappear. It was still the God-slaying Thunder Sword. The indestructible body of Vajra reached the 12th boundary and did not regress. The only thing that regressed was his lifespan and the inner energy condensed from cultivating the Spirit Beast Heart technique. This inner energy was not pure enough. There is a huge difference between the inner energy of a Grandmaster and an enlightened master. The strange little beast in the void of his mind drooped its head and was listless. Sun Mingyue smiled sweetly. "Then you can stay by my side and continue to use the Supreme Diamond Scripture. I'm afraid those Azuras will not dare to come again." She had always been cold and aloof, keeping people at a distance. This sweet smile really had the power to captivate all living things. Chu Li nodded and sighed. "If you're not afraid of me being a jinx, you can stay here. Think about it. There are already 2 groups of people here. What's there to be afraid of?" Sun Mingyue said, "I can't wait for them to come. I can use them to practice." "All right." Chu Li nodded. "I'll stay here for a few days. If I still can't recover my enlightened master's boundary after 10 days, I'll return to Goddess Attraction Mountain." "Okay," Sun Mingyue said softly. She understood what Chu Li meant. If he could not recover his cultivation in 10 days, he would return to Shao Qi's side and die by her side. Her feelings were inexplicably complicated, and she could not explain it clearly. Just as the 2 of them were about to leave, 3 glowing figures flashed in front of them. They were celestial beings. Chu Li frowned. These people were really reckless. Did they really think that they could do whatever they wanted just because they had regressed to the Grandmaster's boundary? They did not even think about how he killed celestial beings back then. Moreover, there were not many who were as strong as the 3 celestial beings he met back then. Especially at this time, those who rushed over to pick up the leftovers were even more limited. Chu Li did not wait for Sun Mingyue to attack. With a strong killing intent, the God-punishing Thunder Sword quickly condensed. 3 swords were unleashed at the same time and continued to condense. With sufficient killing intent, the God-punishing Thunder Sword condensed very quickly. When the 3 swords were unleashed, they condensed into 3 more swords. After becoming an enlightened master, Chu Li's spiritual force had greatly increased, so the speed at which he condensed the God-punishing sword had greatly increased. Bang, bang, bang. Amidst the three explosions, the splendor around the three celestial beings shook. Bang, bang, bang. Another three explosions were heard. The splendor around the three celestial beings dimmed. Chuli scoffed. Idiots like you still dare to come here and make a fool of yourselves. You'll only die if you don't know what's good for you. Go! The three of them shouted. As soon as the three of them finished speaking, their bodies suddenly shone brightly. The white light was dazzling and disappeared after a while. Chuli scoffed. They escaped. Actually, it's good to spare their lives, Sun Mingyue said. She was a little worried. With Chu Li's murderous nature, once he reached the Grandmaster's boundary, he would be in endless trouble. Every celestial being he killed would create hatred. These celestial beings usually had connections in the Grandmaster's boundary, which was why they could descend to this world. Every time Chu Li killed one of them, he would offend the person behind them. Moreover, these people all had extraordinary backgrounds. Chu Li said, "Since they dare to come, I dare to kill them. Let's see if their heads are harder or my sword is sharper." He was filled with anger. Asuras and celestial beings came to kill him again, which turned into a furious killing intent. He decided to be ruthless and kill them one by one. Seeing him like this, Sun Mingyue still advised, "Think about the future. Let's focus on what's in front of us first," Chu Li said. 10 days. I'm not confident that I can become an enlightened master again. You can do it, Sun Mingyue said slowly. She was very confident in Chu Li. Although it seemed impossible, it was not impossible in Chu Li's hands. He always turned the impossible into the possible. Chu Li could not help but laugh. All right, I'll try my best. You don't have enough lifespan, right? Sun Mingyue frowned. From what I know, there's a heart technique that can extend one's lifespan. The ageless longevity technique. Chu Li asked. Sun Mingyue nodded. I heard it's the longevity church's divine technique. Back then, Song Wuji used this technique to perform the heaven-murdering technique. He was insufferably powerful. Chapter 1780. Why aren't you using it? Sun Mingyue was surprised. This is a technique that can prolong your life. It's better than dying, right? That's because the art of ageless longevity requires you to consume lifespan to extend your lifespan, Chu Li said, shaking his head. It's really cruel. I can't take it. I see, Sun Mingyue said. I heard that the ageless live forever technique is incredibly powerful. If you cultivate it to the consummate level, you'll be able to consume everything in the world. Devour everything, Chu Li frowned. Including spirit herbs? Of course. Sun Mingyue nodded slightly. But if your realm is not high enough, you can only devour living things, including humans, spirit beasts, and even wild beasts. You can devour wild beasts now, right? Yes, I can. Chu Li pondered and nodded. But it's useless. Even if I devoured 100 wild beasts, I wouldn't get any stronger, nor will my lifespan increase. Sun Mingyue was confused. Chu Li said, at my current level, I need to devour grandmasters or spirit beasts to be effective. If I can devour an enlightened master, I'll become even stronger. So there's such a restriction. Sun Mingyue nodded in realization. I also found it strange at the time. If it's really that easy, then the ageless longevity technique is really terrifying. Chu Li sighed. She's already very scary now. Think about it. If Li Ming cultivates the ageless longevity technique as her master, you can help her capture a few grandmasters or celestial beings and let Li Ming devour them. Li Ming will become a top-notch master in an instant. That's true. No wonder the Changsha denomination could survive for thousands of years. Sun Mingyue nodded and said, Are you really not going to use it? Chu Li shook his head. This has crossed my bottom line. I won't do it, even if I have to die. There are things a man can do and not do. Sun Mingyue nodded and said, Then go ahead and devour the spiritual herbs. I can't do it with my current level. Chu Li shook his head. Sun Mingyue asked, Then what should we do? I can only look for help. Chu Li smiled and said, Accompany me to the Changshan denomination and have a good chat with Song Jifan. Will he teach you the ageless live forever technique? Sun Mingyue frowned. Chu Li said, You'll know when you get there. All right. Sun Mingyue nodded slowly. The two of them suddenly disappeared from the top of the Great Light Peak. The next moment, they appeared at the foot of the floating mountain. Chu Li raised his voice and shouted, "Song Jifan, come out and meet me." At this time, the floating mountain had already reached the top of another mountain. They were at the top of the mountain, and when they looked up, they could only see the white clouds. However, Chu Li could sense that the floating mountain was above the clouds. "Song Jifan, come out," Chu Li shouted as he channeled his energy again. Sun Mingyue continued to hold his hand, circulating the supreme Vajra Sutra. Chu Li realized that Sun Mingyue's figure had appeared beside the supreme King Kong in the void of his mind, and the supreme King Kong was him. The two of them were holding hands and standing side by side. As he greeted Song Jifan, he pondered over the mysteries of the supreme Vajra Sutra. Why did Sun Mingyue's shadow, who was beside the supreme Vajra, disappear when he first entered the heaven deity realm? Why did it reappear now? What was the secret behind it? He suddenly let go of her hand and stopped circulating the supreme Vajra Sutra. Sun Mingyue's shadow disappeared again. When he held Sun Mingyue's hand again, her shadow reappeared. Chu Li shook his head in confusion. "What are you doing?" Sun Mingyue looked at him impatiently. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "I'm thinking about breaking the seal." At this time, Song Jifan's tall figure appeared in the void, and a handsome smile hung on his face. "Chu Li, to think you would have such a day, haha." He was dressed in a blue shirt and wore a golden crown on his head. He was in high spirits, and his face was ruddy. It was obvious that he knew about Chu Li's encounter and was extremely happy. The flow of information between enlightened masters was extremely fast. Often, two enlightened masters would meet in an instant. The world was so close, so it was naturally convenient for them to talk. At this time, Chu Li's face was extremely old, and his eyes had begun to turn cloudy. "Don't take pleasure in my misfortune. Your end won't be any better than mine." "Ridiculous," Song Jifan sneered and said disapprovingly. "Do you think I'm you? Let me tell you, I have the protection of the patriarch above me. So what if I violated the heavenly rules?" Chu Li said, "The heavenly thunder and the celestial being fell. In short, you almost lost your life." Song Jifan laughed and said, "Speaking of which, I have to thank you. If it wasn't for your help, I would have lost my life." "It's good that you know," Chu Li said lightly. "I have something to trouble you with today." "Let me hear it." Song Jifan smiled and said, "But let me tell you in advance, no matter what it is, I won't agree to it. I just want to hear it." Chu Li said, "I want to learn the ageless longevity technique." "Ha ha!" Song Jifan laughed out loud. "I knew you were going to die soon. Look, you look like you're going to die soon. It's because you're cultivating the heaven-murdering technique, right?" "Ha!" He laughed maniacally, bent over and slapped his knees. He was overjoyed. When he first passed the heaven-murdering technique to Chu Li, he expected this day to come. As expected, it was time to let those old fellows in the church see how wise their decision was. Chu Li stared at him coldly and watched him laugh maniacally. "Chu Li, to think you would have such a day." Song Jifan laughed so hard that he could not breathe. "Where's your prestige from back then? Show it to me. Let me have a taste of it." Chu Li said lightly, "I know the longevity sect's ageless longevity technique." "Huh?" Song Jifan laughed again and shook his head. "Sigh, you must have gone mad from anxiety. Did you hurt your brain because of your inner demons?" Chu Li said, "You don't believe me? Do you think I should believe you or not?" Song Jifan restrained his laughter and shook his head. "All right, go back and find a cemetery and make arrangements for your funeral. We'll meet in the outland in the future." Chu Li frowned. Song Jifan continued to laugh. "But if we meet again in the outland, you'll be the lowest celestial being and I'll be an enlightened master. One is in the sky and the other is on the ground. The difference is like clouds and mud. I don't think there'll be any chance for us to fight." Chu Li scoffed and said lightly, "Do you want me to start chanting the incantation of the ageless longevity technique now?" "Sure, recite it for me," Song Jifan said with a smile. Chu Li said, "Remember what you said." He glanced behind Song Jifan. They heard it. "Don't regret it." Song Jifan's face instantly darkened. He said in a deep voice, come out." As soon as he said that, there was no movement. The surroundings were empty except for the gentle breeze. There was no other response. "Then don't blame me for being ruthless." Song Jifan sneered and pressed on the long sword at his waist. Suddenly, an invincible aura surged out. 4 middle-aged men appeared in the void. Their bodies were reserved and did not reveal a trace of energy. They looked like they did not know martial arts. Chuli frowned and took a step back. He felt danger. These 4 middle-aged men were powerhouses among the celestial beings. They were slightly weaker than the 3 he killed with the Sky Killer Sword, but they were already very strong. He was no match for them now. Sun Mingyue cooperated well with him. When she saw his appearance, she knew what to do. She also took a step back and revealed Song Jifan. It was Song Jifan against the 4 middle-aged men. Chapter 1781. As he retreated, he shouted, "Song Jifan, back off. They're looking for me." "Humph." Song Jifan did not back off. Chuli knew his temper. He could not tolerate being belittled. Moreover, he had Sun Mingyue by his side. Song Jifan did not want to show weakness. Song Jifan fell in love with Sun Mingyue at first sight. Even though they were enemies, he could not suppress his admiration. Therefore, Song Jifan would not allow Sun Mingyue to belittle him. Song Jifan took a step forward and pressed his hand on his treasure sword. He activated the heaven-killing scripture and said slowly, "Why are the 4 of you sneaking around?" "Who are you?" a middle-aged man asked. Chu Li smiled. "This is Song Wuji's descendant. He has the heaven-killing scripture. You guys are really blind to come here to look for trouble." "Song Wuji." The middle-aged man's expression changed. He had a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. He was tall and burly. His eyes were clear and bright. It was obvious that he was a righteous person. Song Jifan scoffed. "That's my ancestor. If that's the case, step aside." The middle-aged man waved his hand and looked at the 3 middle-aged men behind him. The other 3 middle-aged men had different appearances. Their faces were thin and their bodies were slender. Song Jifan said coldly, "This is the Floating Mountains territory. It's not up to you to decide. What do you want?" The middle-aged man with a square face said impatiently, "We're giving Song Wuji face. If you don't know what's good for you, don't blame us for being ruthless. If you leave now, I can spare your lives. If not, don't blame us for being ruthless." Song Jifan said. Chu Li said, "Chief Song, I know about your ageless longevity technique. Do you believe me?" Song Jifan stared at him and sneered. "You really dare to say that? You must be dreaming." Chu Li smiled. "If you don't believe me, I'll recite it for you." He then said, "Heaven and earth belong to Wu Wang. The void belongs to the universe. Wu Wang leads to yin and yang." He recited the general principle of the ageless longevity technique in one breath, followed by the first level. He spoke quickly and did not allow Song Jifan to interrupt. Song Jifan frowned as he tried to figure out if it was real or fake. His heart sank. He didn't expect that the ageless longevity art would be leaked. It was the Changshan denomination's divine art. The 4 Devis stared blankly for a moment, then focused their attention and committed it to memory. They naturally knew about the ageless live forever technique and were extremely eager to have a chance to experience it. Even if they couldn't cultivate it, it would still be helpful in comprehending their sect's heart techniques. Chu Li grinned. "This is the first level, right? How did you know?" Song Jifan frowned, his face as dark as water. Chu Li replied, "How would I know that you don't need to know? I'm here to make a deal with you." "What deal?" Song Jifan gritted his teeth. Chu Li smiled. "I can swear that I won't teach the ageless longevity technique to anyone else, but you'll have to give me the later stages of the sacrificial divine power." Sacrificial divine power. Song Jifan gritted his teeth. "You got a good plan?" Chu Li smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if you don't agree. Just like today, the art of ageless longevity will spread like wildfire. Every master in the world will know about it. When that time comes, the Church of Longevity will be known throughout the world. I'm sure Song Wuji will be very happy that you can do this." Song Jifan's face darkened, his eyes spitting fire. "Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you?" If you could kill me, you would have done it long ago. Chu Li smiled. But you can't do it. So let's make this deal. Okay. Song Jifan nodded slowly. Chu Li looked at the four Devis and shook his head. Unfortunately, these four won't let us do as we wish. They're here to kill me. If I really die, the ageless longevity technique will be famous. Chu Li, you're still so despicable. Song Jifan gritted his teeth. Chu Li laughed. Same to you. Even if I didn't say it, you'd still kill them. Who told them to listen to the first level of the ageless longevity technique? That's right. Song Jifan said hatefully. He pressed on his sword. The aura formed by the heaven-killing sword overpowered the celestial field. Although the four Devis cultivation level was high and their celestial field was extremely strong, it was still lacking compared to the sharp aura of the heaven-killing scripture. This was also the strength of the heaven-killing sword. The four of them frowned and stared at Song Jifan. You've listened to something you shouldn't have. You can only die. Song Jifan said hatefully. If you want to blame someone, blame Chu Li. He's vicious and cause your deaths. He slowly pulled out his sword. Wait. The middle-aged man with a square face said in a deep voice. We're on the same side. Don't fight. They knew the power of the heaven-killing scripture. Once they fought, even if the four of them could win, they would not be able to gain any advantage. If they lost, their lives would be in danger. It was best not to fight. Who's on the same side as you? Song Jifan sneered. His sword was already halfway out. The middle-aged man with a square face said hurriedly, We're Brother Song's juniors. My master? Song Jifan was stunned. That's right. The middle-aged man with a square face frowned. When we came down, Brother Song asked us to take care of the longevity faction. That's why we're here. Really? Song Jifan frowned. Chu Li smiled. Congratulations, Leader Song. Your master even sent people to help you. He really put in a lot of effort. Don't let him down. Shut up, Song Jifan shouted. He could hear the sarcasm and disdain in Chu Li's tone. It was obvious that he was implying that he relied on his ancestor's blessing to reach his current state and that he still had to rely on his ancestor in the future. Chu Li said, Since we're family, it's not a big deal to know about the ageless longevity technique. Song Jifan's eyes flashed, and he slowly nodded. That's true. He let go of his sword, and the aura of the heaven-killing scripture dissipated. Chu Li snickered to himself, but his face was solemn. The ageless longevity technique can only devour grandmasters and spirit beasts, so it should be able to devour spirit herbs as well. However, the ageless longevity technique hasn't been fully enlightened. There must be a trick, right? What nonsense are you talking about? Song Jifan quickly took a step forward and scoffed. Chu Li, you're slandering my ageless longevity technique. You deserve to die. With this step, he was closer to the four Devis. Chu Li laughed. All right, I'm slandering you. Song Jifan pressed on the hilt of his sword. The sword moved like lightning, and a ray of light slashed towards the square-faced, middle-aged man's throat. Chu Li laughed to himself. Sure enough, although he had returned to the Grandmaster's boundary, there was an invisible force that blocked his perception of the Grandmaster's boundary. He could not use the Grandmaster's boundary. The spiritual energy that skyrocketed when he became an enlightened master was not lost. Therefore, the omniscient mirror could still see the mind of an enlightened master or Devis. Song Jifan had the golden crown, which could block the omniscient mirror's prying. However, the other four Devis did not. He could clearly see that they were indeed Song Wuji's junior brothers. Song Wuji's senior brother was extremely dignified. They did not dare to attack Song Jifan, but he knew Song Jifan. Song Jifan would definitely attack them. The truth was as he expected. While Song Jifan was attacking, Chu Li suddenly activated the god-slaying thunder sword. Song Jifan swung his sword at the square-faced, middle-aged man's throat but failed. The four Devis were already on guard against Song Jifan's sudden attack. Chapter 1782. Chu Li. Song Jifan roared and glared at Chu Li. His eyes were bloodshot and he was seriously injured. Chu Li's god-killing thunder sword was incredibly powerful. Song Jifan's golden crown had not fully recovered, and had only recovered half of its strength, so it could not completely block the god-killing thunder sword. Song Jifan had taken half a hit from the sword and was severely injured. He was on the verge of passing out. He held on to his last breath and waited to see what would happen to Chu Li. He raised his voice and shouted, "Since you're the ancestors' junior brothers, hurry up and kill him." The four middle-aged men's faces were gloomy. They were Song Wuji's younger brothers, but not Song Jifan's younger brothers. No matter what, they were still elders, but they were ordered in such a tone. It was really infuriating. The square-faced man said in a deep voice, "Get rid of Chu Li." Chu Li smiled. "Leader Song, what's the trick to absorbing spirit herbs for the ageless longevity technique?" "Haha, I'm not telling you." Song Jifan laughed crazily. "You're going to die today. I want you to be a confused ghost even if you die." Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "Even if I die, I'll only ascend to the Grandmaster's boundary. I won't be a ghost." The four middle-aged men surrounded him. Chu Li's face lit up with a joyful smile. He had already caught the fleeting thought in Song Jifan's mind. He had found the secret to the art of ageless longevity absorbing spirit herbs. The four middle-aged men activated their Deva fields, and the surging power overlapped with each other. It was like a raging wave crashing against Chu Li and Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe frowned and said in a low voice, "You should have left a long time ago." Chu Li shook his head. "I can't." He had tried to activate the divine feat and the great void illumination technique before, but his surroundings had been locked down. This was the work of the four celestials. If he wanted to leave, he would have to kill them. Song Jifan scoffed. "Chu Li, you shouldn't have ambushed them. Otherwise, I might have killed them for you." Chu Li grinned and said, "Thank you very much. Your ancestors are the best. You dared to kill them, but they didn't dare to attack you. Even if they were killed themselves, they wouldn't dare to lay a finger on you. You don't have to sow discord. Today, you and cult leader Sun are dead." Song Jifan sneered. He especially felt that the two of them holding hands were particularly eye-catching. Chu Li sighed. "Bring it on then. Do it," the square-faced, middle-aged man shouted. All of a sudden, the four of them shone brightly as if four suns had fallen from the sky. No one dared to look at them directly. Then four palm prints shot toward Chu Li. They were so fast that it was unavoidable. Chu Li scoffed. Two golden lights fell from the sky and condensed in his palms. Then the two golden palms met the celestial's palm energy. It was the same for Sun Mingwe. The Vajra palm could draw out all the inner energy in one's body, but at their level, they could control how much inner energy was drawn out. Only Sun Mingwe absorbed the Supreme Vajra Sutra's inner energy at a much slower rate, so they did not dare to exhaust all the inner energy in her body in one go. They could only unleash a quarter of its power. Bang! The two of them fluttered backward. The palm power of the four celestials was tyrannical, and their cultivation was extraordinary. Chu Li sighed to himself. The only way to defeat these four people was to use the heaven-killing sword. However, he could not use the heaven-killing sword at the moment, so he could only use the supreme titanium scripture to defend himself. "Go," Chu Li said in a low voice. "I'll use the indestructible body of titanium to block it. You don't have to worry about it. Just focus on escaping." "All right." Sun Mingwe trusted his judgment. She used her light body technique and dashed backward like a shadow. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared in front of the four celestials. They shook their heads and sneered. They looked at Song Jifan, who had landed on the ground, and said, "Leader Song, why don't you go and see how they die?" "No need." Song Jifan shook his head. He did not want to see Sun Mingwe die a horrible death. Looking at Chu Li's condition, not only would he not be able to help Sun Mingwe, but he would also become a burden and tire Sun Mingwe to death. Sun Mingwe used her light body technique and activated the supreme titanium scripture. Chu Li focused and activated the indestructible body of titanium. "Where are you going?" Four celestials appeared in the void. They blocked Chu Li and Sun Mingwe's path, forcing them to attack. Chu Li shouted, "Just go." Sun Mingwe braced herself and rushed forward. "Ha!" The four celestials shook their heads and sneered. They waved their palms. Four lights shot toward the two of them. Chu Li stood in front of Sun Mingwe. Bang, 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 bang. The four-palm energies hit Chu Li's body without any fancy moves. Chu Li took a step back and was pulled back by Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe looked at Chu Li with concern. Chu Li smiled. Chu Li chuckled. Don't worry this time. They can't break my indestructible body of titanium. Really? Sun Mingwe was surprised. Chu Li said, when I became an enlightened master, my indestructible body of titanium broke through to the 12th level. I can still block these people. That's good, Sun Mingwe exclaimed. Her indestructible body of titanium was only at the 10th level. Its power was already shocking. Chu Li had already perfected the 12th level. It was no wonder that he was fine after taking four-palm energies. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst a series of muffled sounds, Chu Li kept getting hit. He was like a meat shield in front of Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe was extremely fast. Chu Li pointed the way. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. No matter how fast Sun Mingwe was, the Celestials only needed to step across the void to catch up. They continued to attack Chu Li, wanting to defeat him. They knew that Chu Li had a protective technique, but they did not believe it. They did not believe that he could last long with his current cultivation level. Therefore, they ignored Sun Mingwe and kept attacking Chu Li. Chu Li was at ease. He did not look like he was going to be defeated. He thought as he was getting hit. Since the god-killing sword could be imbued with thunder and lightning energy, what about the indestructible palm? If the indestructible palm was imbued with thunder and lightning energy, it would be more powerful and could break through their defenses. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried, he could not succeed. It was just an ordinary indestructible palm. He was really helpless, so he used the sacrificial divine power. His body suddenly crouched. Then, he restrained his aura and released it. A golden light fell on his palm. It was as if it was made of gold. It was 30% more realistic than the previous palm prints. The veins were as clear as skin. Bang! His palm instantly landed on the chest of the square-faced man, not giving him a chance to dodge. The square-faced man was instantly sent flying. Chu Li followed up with another palm. The indestructible palm energy that was 10 times more powerful was condensed and fast. The square-faced man's shirt was destroyed, revealing his fair upper body. There was a golden palm print that sank 3 inches into his chest. It was as if it was branded on his chest. The square-faced man still could not dodge the second palm. The indestructible palm accurately hit the previous position. The palm print sank inwards again. It had reached his heart. Bang! A ray of light fell on the square-faced man. He then disappeared without a trace. A light door appeared in the sky. The square-faced man appeared outside the light door. He looked down unwillingly and helplessly entered the light door. Chu Li's aura was weak. He was no longer able to fight. The remaining 3 Devis were furious. They originally wanted to defeat Chu Li, who was passively being beaten. They never thought that Chu Li's counterattack would be so unyielding. He actually killed one of them. They activated their secret technique. The light around their bodies suddenly shone brightly. It was as if 3 suns were falling toward Chu Li and Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe saw that something was wrong with Chu Li, but she could not stop him in time. He was still using a secret technique to stimulate his potential in this state. He must be tired of living. She was angry and annoyed. She pulled him over. Her body suddenly shone brightly. The divine light flame burned around her. Chapter 1783. Chu Li shook his head helplessly when he saw her use such a secret skill. He could not stop her immediately. The divine light technique would not kill her immediately. It would take some time to burn. He just had to stop her at the critical moment and not let her die immediately. At most, she would suffer a great loss of vitality. She might be able to escape from the 3 celestial beings. The 3 celestial beings were already in a frenzied state. Their situation was no different from Sun Mingwe. Their bodies shone brighter and brighter until no one dared to look at them directly. Compared to the dazzling light from before, this time it was so blinding that one could not look at it directly. Chu felt the turbulent flow of the supreme titanium scripture's inner energy. It was several times stronger than usual, and the speed of circulation was also several times faster. It formed a powerful force. Although he was dying and his potential was almost drained by the sacrificial divine power, he could still use several Vajra palms in one breath. The Vajra palms were solid and more powerful than before. Bang, 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 bang. The muffled sounds were endless. The storm formed by the five's palm energy crushed the rocks. The grass and trees were not spared and turned into powder. They stepped in the void and attacked with all their might. The three celestial beings could see that Chu Li and Sun Mingwei were at the end of their rope and could not hold on any longer. Chu Li had already used his secret skill, and Sun Mingwei was using hers. Once the secret skill ended, they would be finished. Although they wanted to kill Chu Li immediately, they knew that Chu Li and Sun Mingwei could not be underestimated. The death of their senior brother was a lesson. They could not be reckless. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst the muffled sounds, the five of them flew back and forth in the air. Everywhere they passed, the mountain peaks became bare. The birds and beasts in the forest had long sensed the danger and fled desperately. Done, Chu Li suddenly said. Sun Mingyue's eyes sparkled like jewels. Her entire body was like white jade, shining brightly and dazzlingly. She was shockingly beautiful. However, Chu Li knew that things were not looking good. She had already reached her peak state. In another 15 minutes, she would ascend to heaven. Sun Mingwei ignored his words and continued to attack. She wanted to kill the three celestial beings before she ascended to heaven so that they would not sacrifice themselves in vain. The three celestial beings noticed Sun Mingyue's abnormality and could not help but laugh. Sacrificing yourself to save such a useless thing, is it worth it? Song Jifan appeared in the void. He was dressed in a blue tunic as he stood in the void. His golden crown shone brightly as he stared at Sun Mingyue with a complicated expression. His eyes were filled with regret and discomfort, anger and murderous intent as he glared at Chu Li. When he thought about how he would never be able to see Sun Mingyue's beauty again, he felt an inexplicable sense of loss and melancholy. The main culprit of all this was Chu Li, the B****starred. He clearly could not protect his own woman, but he still wanted to show off. In the end, he had caused Sun Mingyue's death. Chu Li suddenly slapped Sun Mingyue's back. Sun Mingwei had never thought that Chu Li would attack her. Caught off guard, her acupuncture point was easily struck. Her body instantly froze, and she could not move at all. The only thing that could move was her eyes. Surnamed Chu, I really looked down on you. Song Jifan sneered. Chu Li ignored him. He stared at Sun Mingwei and sighed. I didn't expect us to end up like this. It's my fault. Sun Mingyue was unable to speak, but she glared at him with her bright eyes, indicating for him to release her acupoints. Chu Li shook his head. I owe you this time. I can only leave first. We'll meet again in the Outland in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, his left hand was still holding her jade-like hand. His right hand was already on the hilt of the regal sky sword. Suddenly, a fierce aura filled the air. Sun Mingyue's eyes widened. She knew Chu Li's plan. He wanted to use the regal sky sword and continue to consume her lifespan. She only had about 10 days of lifespan left. It was not enough for him to extract. Chu Li's hand was on the hilt of the regal sky sword. He felt bitter. He clearly knew how to use the ageless longevity technique to absorb the lifespan of the spirit herbs and spirit trees. He was only one step away. As long as he could escape, he could enter the 100,000 hills in the next moment. He could extend his lifespan and recover to his normal state. He could even use the regal sky sword as a regular technique. By then, he would be unrivaled in the world. Unfortunately, he was only one step away. This step was like a natural moat. It was a great irony. If he did not know the key to the regal sky technique, he would not be so ironic. He had painstakingly obtained it. He obtained it, but could not use it. He could only give up the lifespan that was at his fingertips. He could only die. He took a deep breath and tossed aside the gloominess in his heart. He only had 15 days of lifespan left. It was impossible to kill the three celestials. However, he could do one thing. He could break their seal and use God's limbs to take Sun Mingyue away. Under Sun Mingyue's wide eyes, Chu Li slowly pulled out his sword. The sword was halfway out. His aura was already extremely fierce. The three celestials could not help but take a step back. Chu Li suddenly flashed and disappeared in front of the four people with Sun Mingyue. He was planning to escape. Song Jifan shouted and stomped his feet. A muffled sound came from the void. He was tricked again. He wanted to howl at the sky and drag Chu Li over to slap him until he died. The three of them hurriedly disappeared. Song Jifan also disappeared in the void. He wanted to catch up to Chu Li. It was a rare opportunity. This time, he must kill him. Chu Li and Sun Mingyue appeared in a valley. This was a formation that had been set up long ago for escape. In the end, it was still used. He was not in the mood to admire his foresight. His body was limp, and he had no strength left. Sun Mingyue's acupuncture points were already unsealed. She quickly supported him. Chu Li was almost paralyzed on her. He smiled. I finally escaped. I didn't die in their hands. Sun Mingyue frowned and said impatiently, Why did you have to do this? If she could use the divine light technique to its fullest, she would definitely be able to escape. Chu Li would not have died. Chu Li laughed. What do you think? I'd rather die myself than let you sacrifice yourself to save me. It's too late to go back now. I won't say goodbye to Madam. Bring this sky killer sword to her. Anything else? Sun Mingyue asked. Her beautiful face was calm. There were no tears. She desperately activated the supreme titanium scripture. Their auras were still connected. She could feel his weakening through the supreme titanium scripture's inner energy. He was getting weaker and weaker. The supreme titanium scripture that returned was getting thinner. She knew that even the spirit blessing pill was useless. His lifespan was up and the pills were ineffective. She pinned all her hopes on the supreme titanium scripture. The scripture was mysterious. If Chu Li had a chance of survival, it would be on the supreme titanium scripture. Unfortunately, the supreme titanium scripture sensed that Chu Li was getting weaker. His aura was quickly dissipating. There was no turning back. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. I'll let Madam down. I really have nothing to say. You've let her down by dying so early. Sun Mingyue scoffed. He. Chu Li chuckled. I'll tell you the truth. I've already written my will. If I can't return, someone will pass it to her. Sun Mingyue rolled her eyes. You're still in the mood to joke at a time like this. Chu Li sighed. I'll let you down too. I can only repay you when I reach the outland. His tone was getting weaker. His gaze quickly dimmed. Chapter 1784. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Where's your ambition? Are you willing to die like this? So what if I'm not? Chu Li smiled and shook his head. I'm not willing. Sun Mingyue gritted her teeth and channeled all of the supreme titanium scripture's inner energy into Chu Li's body. She refused to believe that she could not save Chu Li. After channeling all of the supreme titanium scripture's inner energy into Chu Li's body, her body deteriorated rapidly. The side effects of using the divine light technique needed to be suppressed by the supreme titanium scripture. Without the suppression, even an enlightened master would not be able to avoid weakening, and she would soon suffer the pain of the heavenly deterioration. Chu Li frowned and pushed back the supreme titanium scripture's inner energy that surged in. Once Sun Mingyue's supreme titanium scripture entered Chu Li's body, it became his. She could not control it and could only watch as the inner energy surged back. Chu Li closed his eyes and was about to breathe his last. Sun Mingyue glared at him. In your dreams, once Chu Li died, there was nothing left in this world. Staying here was pure torture. It was better to die and accompany each other in the outland. At this moment, she could no longer care about the Holy Church of Light. She wanted to indulge herself and act according to her feelings. Chu Li smiled with his eyes closed. Let's not meet so soon in the outland. You still have the Holy Church of Light and Li Ming. How can you just leave like this? Aren't you the same? Sun Mingyue scoffed. If you leave, what will happen to your precious wife? Will she be able to handle it? Chu Li tried his best to open his eyes and shook his head with a smile. Bishop, You're really ruthless. Hurry up and save yourself. Sun Mingwe scoffed. The supreme titanium scripture's inner energy was pushed back and forth between the two. When it came to Chu Li, it was immediately pushed back. When it came to Sun Mingwe, it was immediately pushed back. The two's back and forth was against the supreme titanium scripture's cultivation method. The supreme titanium scripture's cultivation method should be interconnected. There should be something in you and something in me. It should not be like this where you give everything to me and I give everything to you. Huh? Chu Li suddenly opened his eyes. He noticed something strange in his mind. The supreme Vajra was originally sitting cross-legged in the void, and between its palms was an overflowing blue thunder bead. At this time, there was a sudden change. The original supreme Vajra disappeared, and a new supreme Vajra appeared. This supreme Vajra was exactly the same as him, vivid and lifelike, yet even more dignified and divine. Moreover, golden radiance was released from its body, illuminating the entire space within his mind. A mnemonic chant appeared in Chu Li's mind. Sun Mingwe also turned her head to look at him. She had also received this part of the incantation. This mnemonic chant was the next level of the Supreme Vajra Sutra. It was truly supreme, not the previous foundation establishment stage. Moreover, it was not only the Supreme Vajra Sutra, but also the Vajra Palm and the Vajra Invincible Body. They had become the Supreme Vajra Palm and the Supreme Vajra Invincible Body. With the word supreme, one could see how powerful it was. The two of them exchanged glances and began to circulate the new Supreme Vajra Sutra, the true Supreme Vajra Sutra. As his aura circulated, a strange and novel feeling surfaced in his heart. He was full of vitality, and his lethargy was completely gone. The true Supreme Vajra Sutra in Chu Li's body became purer and more profound. With the help of Sun Mingwe, even if he could not absorb the spiritual energy of the Outland, it did not hinder his cultivation. As the Supreme Vajra Sutra became purer, he gradually felt an invisible force. It was this force that circled in his body, cutting off his connection with the spiritual energy of the Outland. Before this, he knew but could not feel this force. Now that the Supreme Vajra Sutra had advanced to the next level, he could clearly feel this force. Boom! He circulated the Supreme Vajra Sutra's inner energy and collided with this force. His ears were ringing, his vision blurred, and he almost fainted. His will was as strong as steel, so he maintained his consciousness. Seeing that the force did not change, he continued to attack. Boom! Boom! Thunderclaps rang in his ears as the Supreme Vajra Sutra attacked again and again. Sun Mingwe sensed his thoughts and gave him a helping hand. Rumble, rumble, rumble. An unending barrage of attacks rang out, each one stronger than the last. The more they used the Supreme Vajra Sutra, the more agile, the purer, the more powerful it became, and the louder the sound became. Chu Li had the indestructible body of diamond, so he could withstand the impact. If it was someone else, their internal organs would have been ruptured and they would have died. Chu Li could feel this force weakening. The Supreme Vajra Sutra was powerful and had a destructive impact on it. Boom! This time, the sound was different. The Supreme Vajra Sutra penetrated his entire body and circulated endlessly. It was fast and smooth, as if he had gone from a narrow path to a smooth road. Chu Li felt an indescribable sense of joy and howled at the sky. After the howl, a golden light beam fell from heaven and earth, directly penetrating his body. The spiritual energy of the Outland that was originally cut off descended again. This time, the spiritual energy turned from crimson to golden, and it was on a higher level. Chu Li laughed at the sky. At this moment, he felt that his body was unrestrained and had jumped out of the 5 elements. He had truly reached the realm of freedom. He had truly become an enlightened master, not a fake enlightened master like before, but a real one. From now on, he was free and unrestrained. The Outland could not do anything to him and could not seal his cultivation. His old and withered body quickly recovered, and in the blink of an eye, he had recovered to his original state. He had once again become a heroic young man with a radiant spirit. Sun Mingwe let out a long breath and smiled sweetly like a spring flower. Chu Li reached out and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her smooth forehead and laughed. Awesome, awesome. Sun Mingwe pushed him lightly. Is there really no problem this time? No problem. Chu Li laughed. Let's see what this outland can do to me this time. It's nothing more than letting the Celestials and enlightened masters kill me. Sun Mingwe said, the outland let the Celestials descend to recruit soldiers and buy horses. They want more people to become grandmasters so that they can enter the outland after they die and strengthen the outland's strength. Letting the Celestials and enlightened masters kill you is just a convenience. Since they can't kill you, they won't force it. They'll deal with you when you reach the outland. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. From what he saw, the outland still had many tricks up their sleeves, especially against this world. It was like a big city against a small town. There were many ways to attack. However, he was no longer afraid now. Instead, he was excited. He wanted to experience the tricks of the outland. Even if it was the power of a world, he wanted to challenge it. I finally found you. Song Jifan's proud laughter suddenly sounded. Then, he slowly floated out of the void with a blue shirt and a golden crown. He stood in the void and looked at Chu Li. He suddenly frowned. Chu Li had restored his appearance, and both of them were in good condition. He felt a sense of danger, and his instinct told him to turn around and run. He did not listen to his instinct. Instead, he stared at Chu Li carefully. He wanted to see what happened to Chu Li. Why did he feel so much stronger in such a short time? 3 Celestials slowly appeared behind him, and their bodies shone brightly. You can't escape this time, Chu Li. Song Jifan gritted his teeth and scoffed. You must die today. Then let's see who dies first. Chu Li laughed. Chapter 1785. Chu Li pressed his hand on the sky-killing sword, and a sharp aura rose around him. The aura, as sharp as the sky-killing sword, pounced on the 4 people in front of him. Song Jifan's expression changed slightly, and he scoffed coldly. You're deliberately mystifying us again. Chu Li nodded and looked at the other 3 celestial men. As Song Wuji's lackeys, all of you are quite dutiful. Die then. The heaven-killing sword was unsheathed, calm, and slow. He slowly walked to one of the celestial beings and gently stabbed it into his chest. Then he pulled it out and stabbed it into the chest of another celestial being. Then he pulled it out and stabbed it into the chest of the 3rd celestial being. Sun Mingwe could see everything clearly even though the process seemed very slow. However, she was curious as to why the 3 unbelievably powerful celestial beings did not resist at all and allowed Chu Li to stab them. Then, 3 beams of white light exploded and shot up into the sky. The next moment, Chu Li looked at Song Jifan. His eyes flickered as if he was deep in thought. Song Jifan's expression changed drastically as he exclaimed, Chu Li, you dare to kill me? Chu Li scoffed. According to his temper, he would have killed Song Wuji directly to save a lot of trouble. He would have killed Song Wuji in the future. However, he did not take Song Jifan seriously now. Moreover, Song Jifan was a treasure. The Changshan denomination had many secret skills. It would be a pity to destroy them. Moreover, if he wanted to kill Song Wuji, he needed to understand Song Wuji well enough. Song Jifan's best move was also an important weakness that could be used against him. He couldn't give it up easily. He was weighing his options. Song Jifan shouted, Chu Li, if you kill me, don't even think about getting the sacrificial divine power. Chu Li's tensed face relaxed, and he smiled. All right, since you didn't kill me this time, I'll spare your life for now. If you offend me again, don't blame me for being merciless. In your dreams. Do you think I would fall into your hands? Song Jifan sneered and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, he had to be stubborn to avoid being looked down upon by Sun Mingwe. Maybe you will offend me. Don't worry, I will spare your life. Chu Li said faintly, Spare my life? Then make me wish I was dead. Song Jifan took a deep look at Sun Mingwe and disappeared into the void. Sun Mingwe watched him leave and frowned. Why didn't you just kill him? He's still useful. Chu Li smiled. He's not much of a threat now. We can't underestimate them either. Sun Mingwe shook her head and said, what if Song Wuji's people come to help? That's great. Chu Li smiled. He felt refreshed and in high spirits. He wished for nothing more than for more people to come and throw their lives away, so that he could kill to his heart's content and vent the depression he had accumulated during this period of time. Just as he was thinking this, the void suddenly shook, and 6 figures appeared in the void 100 feet away from them. All of them were old men with solemn expressions. They were tall and sturdy, and their eyes were like lightning. They glanced at Sun Mingwe before their gazes landed on Chu Li. Are you Chu Li? That's me. Chu Li nodded. He sized them up and asked, are you enlightened masters? That's right. The 4 elders nodded slowly. Chu Li furrowed his brows. I don't want to kill you. Leave. All of you have worked so hard to become heavenly gods. Why do you have to throw away your lives? He recognized their identities at a glance. They were not real enlightened masters, but they were under the protection of the enlightened master's remains. They were enlightened on the path of enlightened masters from the remains. This kind of enlightened master was weaker than the enlightened masters conferred by the Grandmaster. They were not real enlightened masters, but they were much stronger than Grandmasters. It was like an adult and a child. Although the adult was not strong enough, he was not someone a child could defeat. You sure talk big, a thin elder said. Chu Li, you're a delicious cake now. Everyone wants to eat you and become a real enlightened master. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Have you ever thought that you're a poisonous, delicious cake? Let's not care about that. Let's eat you first, the elder said. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. If that's the case, I can only fulfill your wish. He felt pity for these people because they had been pursuing it for decades, or even centuries, just to become an enlightened master. It was like crossing a natural moat. It was extremely difficult, and they had sacrificed a lot to get to this point. It would be a pity if they died just like that. However, humans had no intention of hurting tigers, but tigers hurt humans. He pitied them, but they wanted to kill him. 3 god-slaying thunder swords were unleashed. The 3 of them fell limply to the ground dead. The other 3 were stunned. They quickly got into a defensive stance and tensed up their bodies. Another 3 god-slaying thunder swords were unleashed, and the 3 of them fell to the ground as well. Chu Li said that he pitied them, but he was ruthless and merciless. Mercy would only leave behind big trouble. These people were all strong-willed and tenacious people. They would definitely do anything to get their revenge. He realized that his soul had grown stronger again. The speed at which he condensed the god-slaying thunder swords increased greatly. He could condense them in an instant, and it was extremely fast. It was also because he was filled with anger and killing intent. Sun Mingwe shook her head and sighed. There are always people who don't know what's good for them. They think they have a chance, Chu Li said. There will be more. I'll fulfill their wish today. As they spoke, a few more people appeared from the void. Chu Li glanced at them and said, the Azuras are joining in the fun. Just nice. The 10 Azuras all had shocking cultivation levels. When they saw Chu Li and Sun Mingwe, their expressions changed. They realized that something was wrong. Chu Li was far stronger than they had imagined. The 10 of them were not confident that they could kill him. Chu Li said, I'm Chu Li. Are you here to kill me? That's right, one of the Azuras said. Chu Li did not say anything else. He unsheathed the Sky Killer and killed 10 Azuras in an instant. 10 rays of red light flashed, and 10 hearts of Azura appeared. 10 pillars of red light descended from the sky and guided the 10 hearts of Azura away. Chu Li condensed a golden palm with his left hand. The Supreme Vajra palm hit one of the red light pillars. Bam! The Supreme Vajra palm was shattered. The red light pillar trembled. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and continued to condense the Supreme Vajra palm. Sun Mingwe saw this and did the same. Their Supreme Vajra palms collided with the red light pillar. Bam! Amidst the earth-shattering sound, the red light pillar suddenly brightened and expanded. It was originally only as thick as a thigh, but now it was as thick as a person's arm. It was like a giant pillar that crashed into Chu Li. Chu Li lowered his body and performed the sacrificial power. He pushed Sun Mingwei away and extracted the supreme Vajra scripture's inner energy from Sun Mingwei's body. Under the activation of the sacrificial power, both his and Sun Mingwei's cultivation levels were condensed in his left palm. It turned into a brilliant golden supreme Vajra palm. Rumble. The red light pillar collided with the supreme Vajra palm. The sound was so loud that Sun Mingwei had to cover her ears to avoid deafness. The supreme Vajra palm collided with the red light pillar like a hot knife through butter. It then came out from the other side. The red light pillar became brighter, and the heart of Azura rose faster. It was about to reach a height of 10 feet. Chu Li activated the life and death scripture to assist the true supreme titanium scripture. The golden pillar of light suddenly shone brightly, and after the spiritual force surged into his body, it transformed into the true supreme titanium scripture without the need to circulate it. Then, he condensed another supreme Vajra palm. Chapter 1786. Sun Mingwei was shocked. She did not expect Chu Li to be able to destroy the light pillar. It looked like he was going to destroy it. It was a spiritual force that descended from the outland. Her spirits lifted as she held onto Chu Li's right hand and activated the true supreme titanium supreme scripture. Their inner energies fused together, and the power of their hands increased tremendously. Then, she activated the supreme Vajra palm. After merging it with Chu Li's palm energy, the power became several times stronger. Boom! Following a loud explosion, the crimson pillar of light dissipated. The heart of Azura fell from the sky. Chu Li waved his hand, and the heart of Azura flew into his hand. He carefully examined the heart of Azura. This heart was different from the ones he had seen before. Its color was redder and darker. There were also densely packed patterns on the heart. It looked very strange. He could vaguely see that the patterns contained the secrets of Azura. Chu Li stared at the heart of Azura. He wanted to imprint it into his mind. Then, he could use the Heavenly Star Insight technique to derive it. He might be able to find the secret of Azura's immortality. As soon as he finished, the heart of Azura shrunk in his hand. From the size of a heart, it became a red date. It was as red as blood. If it was placed outside, many people would think it was a red date. They would never think that it was the heart of Azura. Sun Mingwei went forward to examine it. This is the heart of Azura? Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingwei said, "It's useless even if you have it. It can't be destroyed or killed. It will be reborn in the future." Chu Li said, "The supreme Vajra palm can restrain it. Let's see if it can suppress it." Sun Mingwei shook her head. If it really works, Azura wouldn't be so arrogant. Chu Li smiled. "Maybe we'll gain something. Then let's try." Sun Mingwei was also eager. Chu Li extended his left palm. A golden light fell from the sky and formed a golden palm print in his palm. It wrapped around the jujube-shaped heart of Azura. Immediately, the heart of Azura shot out a red light. The red light and the golden light fought. Sometimes, the red light had the upper hand. Sometimes, the golden light had the upper hand. As Chu Li extended his right palm, a golden light descended from the sky and condensed into a palm print. His right hand joined his left palm, and the two golden palms merged into one. Their power increased tremendously. The golden light wanted to wrap around the red light, but the red light seemed to feel threatened. It struggled with all its might, and the area it could defend became smaller and smaller, almost touching the heart of Azura. Sun Mingwei extended her palm, and a golden light descended from the sky, condensing into the supreme Vajra palm. Then, she gently patted Chu Li's hand. The golden light expanded once again, and it suppressed the red light even more. It was about to touch the heart of Azura. Bang! The red light suddenly exploded, dazzling everyone and shaking their hearts. Chu Li took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He used the omniscient mirror to stare at the heart of Azura within the red light. he noticed that the heart of Azura had changed again. It was as if it had turned into a shadow. Chu reached out his hand to search, but there was nothing there. It looked like the heart of Azura, but when he touched it, it was empty. So, he struck it with the supreme Vajrapalm. Golden light flashed, and it easily passed through the heart of Azura. The heart of Azura had turned into a shadow, and the supreme Vajrapalm could not do anything to it. It's so strange. Sun Mingwe also tried to strike it with her palm, but it was to no avail. Chu seemed to have made up his mind. Since it was a shadow, a spiritual attack should be effective. So he stabbed it with the god-punishing thunder sword, but the shadow did not respond. The god-punishing thunder sword also sensed that it was empty. It was clearly in front of him, but he could not touch it. This strange feeling made Chu itch unbearably. It was as if he could hurt it, destroy it, but he could not reach that point no matter what. Sun Mingwe suddenly struck with her palm, and it was the divine light flame. The divine light flame silently passed through the shadow of the heart of Azura. There was no reaction, and it was extremely strange. Is there really no other way? Sun Mingwe frowned. Chu suddenly sat on the ground, formed a seal with his hands, and began to recite the Mahavarokuna's immobility scripture. The scripture was like lotus flowers floating out of his mouth and falling onto the heart of Azura. Sun Mingwe could not see the lotus flowers, but she could see that the shadow of the heart of Azura was swaying, like the moon in the water, gently rippling. Chu Li's omniscient mirror noticed that after the lotus flowers fell onto the heart of Azura, they were eliminated by an invisible force. He sped up, and the lotus flowers shrouded the heart of Azura, wanting to consume the red light on the heart of Azura. Unfortunately, no matter how many lotus flowers there were, they could not really destroy the heart of Azura. He stopped reciting the scripture, stood up, and shook his head. There's no way to restrain it at the moment. You can't suppress it? Sun Mingwe said. The divine light scripture could restrain Azura back then, but the effect was minimal. It's useless against this kind of Azura. It's useless. Chu sighed. The Tempest Temple's Dharma and the divine light scripture could restrain Azura, but they could only suppress the Azura of this world. They could not do anything to the Azura that descended. Sun Mingwe frowned. Are we supposed to just watch them do whatever they want? It's not that they're not afraid of death. Chu shook his head. Dying once is no different than a grandmaster dying once. It's just that it's easier for them to recall their past life's memories. Sun Mingwe said, their physique is special, and it's even more terrifying. Chu nodded. The Tempest Temple and the Holy Church of Light can restrain them, and with our supreme titanium scripture, they won't dare to act recklessly. I'll start killing Azura. Accept the Grandmaster's decree? Yes. Do you know that the Grandmaster has issued another decree, and the target is you? Sun Mingwe said. It did not matter if she said it now. The punishment had already been carried out, and she could not keep it to herself. I can guess. Chu smiled. He wanted to see who dared to complete the Grandmaster's decree. He wanted to kill them and establish his authority, so that no one would dare to touch him. As they were talking, the heart of Azura suddenly flashed and disappeared without a trace. Chu Li's omniscient mirror saw that it was completely hidden in the void. There was no place to find it, and he could not sense it. He decided to analyze the patterns on the heart of Azura. Even if he could not find a way to restrain it, it would be beneficial to deal with Azura. At that moment, 3 middle-aged men appeared in the void. They were all restrained, and they stood in the void staring at Chu Li, sizing him up. Chu Li could tell that they were celestials at a glance. This time, the Grandmaster had really gone crazy. If they did not come to kill him, he would not have imagined that so many celestials would descend. It seemed that the situation was extremely unfavorable, and the Grandmaster urgently needed manpower. Chu Li pressed on the heaven-killing sword's hilt, and a sharp aura slowly spread out. After he became an enlightened master, his lifespan increased greatly, and he found a way to consume spirit herbs to extend his lifespan, so he could use the heaven-killing sword without worry. The 3 celestials looked solemn, but they suddenly froze and looked up at the sky. Chu Li and Sun Minghua looked up at the sky. Chapter 1787. Chu Li chuckled. The corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking manner. The Grand Master had finally acknowledged his position as an enlightened master. Their belated acknowledgement was really interesting. Was this a slap to his own face? Previously, they refused to acknowledge his position as an enlightened master and even sent a Grandmaster's order to kill him. Now that he was finally unafraid of their seal and could break free to become an enlightened master, they admitted it. It seemed like they saw that things were not going well and immediately changed their stance. Sun Minghua smiled brightly like a morning flower. No matter what, being an enlightened master recognized by the Grandmaster was the right thing to do. Even though he was awe-inspiring and killed enlightened masters like killing chickens, he still felt that it was not safe enough. Congratulations. Sun Minghua smiled sweetly. Chu Li smiled. They finally stopped. I thought they would kill a few more celestials and enlightened masters. Those who came to kill you are all fake enlightened masters who seek riches and danger. There are also celestials who do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Which real enlightened master would dare to come? Sun Minghua said, if you continue to kill, the Grandmaster's reputation will be tarnished. Moreover, they sent the celestials down to recruit soldiers. Now that so many of them have died in your hands, it's a great loss to the Grandmaster. They can't afford it. Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. This group of elders from the sky beyond sky were cunning and cunning. They could actually justify this matter by saying that this was a tribulation that one had to experience in order to become a god. After overcoming this tribulation, one could truly step into the position of a heavenly god. Bystanders couldn't find fault with this because almost no one cared about this path. They didn't understand it, so they could only let them explain. Moreover, Chu Li could not determine whether there was such a rule or not. Perhaps there really was such a rule. He would have to deal with this mess in the future. He looked at the three celestials with bright eyes and said, do you still want to fight? Since the Grandmaster's order has been withdrawn, we have no enmity with you. Naturally, we won't fight. A middle-aged celestial closed fist saluted. Chief Chu was able to draw out a Grandmaster's order on his own. I'm impressed. The Grandmaster's order had been withdrawn, and no one could do anything to Chu Li after such a long time. This Chu Li would definitely become a big shot in the future. Since he could not kill him, it would only benefit him to say a few words to form a good relationship. Chu Li said faintly, you're too polite. Forgive me for not sending you off. The three of them cupped their fists and disappeared into the void. It's finally quiet. Sun Minghua's eyes were like water as she looked at him quietly. You can also have a good night's sleep. We should go back now. Thinking back to everything that had happened earlier, it was like a dream, and it suddenly felt surreal. Every time she was with Chu Li, it was thrilling and exciting. Compared to staying in the Divine Light Basilica all day, it was countless times more thrilling and exciting. Chu Li nodded and said, we still have to be careful of the Azuras. Sun Minghua nodded lightly. The two suddenly flashed, returning to the Light Palace, almost at the same time. Li Meng was pacing back and forth in front of her desk. She looked anxious and restless. When she saw Chu Li and Sun Minghua return, she was overjoyed and called out, Master, Martial Uncle Chu. Chu Li nodded, then suddenly disappeared. Li Meng was startled. She turned her head and said, Martial Uncle Chu. He's in a hurry to see Madam, Sun Minghua said. Did anything big happen while I was away? Li Meng hurriedly said, Elder Yang has left the Great Light Peak with some people to deal with Royal Blade Palace. Nonsense. Sun Minghua frowned and scoffed. Li Meng said, they only dared to act so presumptuously when you weren't here. If you were here, they wouldn't have dared to act recklessly. Sun Minghua nodded slowly. Master, should we chase after them and bring them back? Li Meng asked. Sun Minghua pondered for a moment and shook her head. Forget it. It's good to let them try. Otherwise, they won't give up. Royal Blade Palace isn't the original Royal Blade Palace. Master, why is that? Li Meng asked curiously. Although Royal Blade Palace is one of the 4 major sects of the Qiu dynasty, they're still far inferior to us. Why can't we deal with them? Royal Blade Palace has sent 2 celestial beings. Sun Mingwe scoffed. If celestial beings from sects like the 4 major sects were to descend, it would definitely disrupt the balance of the martial arts world. The world would fall into chaos, and there would be more casualties. From this, one could see the sinister intentions of the Grandmaster. No wonder. Li Meng came to a sudden realization and said hatefully, "They're really arrogant after achieving their goals. They're just despicable people." Sun Mingwe shook her head and said, "Royal Blade Palace is very troublesome. Let's see how far Elder Yang and the others can go." Li Meng was confused. "Master, Elder Yang left the mountain without permission. Shouldn't we punish him?" Sun Mingwe said. "He went with the flow and won everyone's trust. If we punish him rashly, it'll only dampen his spirit. It's not too late to settle the score after this." "I see." Li Meng nodded slowly. She had already consciously learned how to deal with educational affairs from Sun Mingwe. She had heard from the disciples of Great Light, Peak, that Master had been dealing with educational affairs since she was young. At her age, she had already become the saint of the Holy Church of Light. She handled all educational affairs independently and did not need the Grandmaster's help at all. Although she was not as good as Master, she could not be too bad. Otherwise, she would embarrass Master and the Grandmaster who had chosen her. She would not be able to face the Grandmaster and the Grandmaster's boundary in the future. Chu Li suddenly appeared on Goddess Attraction Mountain. Through the omniscient mirror, he saw the 3 women on the mountain and Zhou Dunli in the basilica. He was stunned and appeared in the basilica. "Master!" Chu Li gave a fist salute and strode over to Zhou Dunli. He frowned and asked, "How did you get so badly injured?" Zhou Dunli's pale face looked as if it was covered with a layer of gold powder. He was barely breathing and his life was in danger. Logically, with Zhou Dunli's cultivation level, he should not have been so badly injured. His inner energy was strong enough to heal himself. "It's nothing serious." Zhou Dunli opened his eyes and waved his hand. Chu Li frowned. "It's not that it's nothing serious. Master, let me help you." Other injuries were a piece of cake for him unless his life force was exhausted like before. Whether it was the life and death scripture or the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, he could quickly recover from his injuries. He did not allow Zhou Dunli to refuse. He immediately sat behind him and pressed both palms on him. As soon as he pressed his palms, he looked at Zhou Dunli in surprise. He did not expect Zhou Dunli to cultivate the dragon taming technique. As an enlightened master, he cultivated the dragon taming technique. Then, he suddenly remembered the golden dragon. "Master, where's the golden dragon?" Chu Li asked. Zhou Dunli sighed. "It's healing somewhere else. Without its help, you might not see me again." "Who did it?" Chu Li asked. "Azura." Zhou Dunli said. "This matter is far from you. You don't have to worry about it. It's not easy for you to pass the Grandmaster order." "Is Azura really that powerful?" Chu Li activated the supreme titanium scripture. The Azura power technique was entangled in Zhou Dunli's body. Like Azura, it was indestructible. It was constantly being destroyed by the dragon taming technique, but it kept recovering. The true supreme Vajra supreme scripture countered the Azura power technique. Wherever it passed, the Azura power technique would disperse and disappear. Chu Li let go of his palms. The remaining injuries were not a concern for Zhou Dunli. Zhou Dunli slowly opened his eyes and looked at Chu Li in surprise. Chu Li smiled. Zhou Dunli sighed. "No wonder you could pass the Grandmaster order. I'm not as good as you. Why don't I see Senior Brother Dong?" Chu Li changed the topic. He realized that his cultivation level was indeed higher than Zhou Dunli's. He could not just admit it. Chapter 1788. Jian went down the mountain to gain experience. Zhou Dunli said he needs to train his heart and strengthen his will to better perform the empowerment. "Senior brother, you've already done it?" Chu Li asked. Zhou Dunli nodded. "Once. If you want to become an enlightened master, you'll need to do it again. However, you'll need a strong enough will or you won't be able to withstand it." The most important thing about empowerment was one's will and state of mind. The process was extremely painful, as if the body was about to split. Without a strong enough will, it would be difficult to withstand it. Once you give up, you'll die. The state of mind often determined the digestion of the power from the empowerment. Without a strong enough state of mind, one's cultivation level would not be able to be maintained. The reason why Fa Yuan and Sun Mingwei could suddenly increase their cultivation level through empowerment was because they cultivated the Buddhist base. Through the Buddhist base, they forged a strong enough state of mind, which allowed them to break through the barrier in one go. Chu Li understood this. Senior brother, you've suffered. He's not bad. Zhou dumbly smiled. Chu Li said, Master, I don't understand. The golden dragon is a supreme spirit beast. It said that there are no great enlightened masters in the Outland. How can it threaten a supreme spirit beast? The great enlightened masters are comparable to supreme spirit beasts, but there are also mystical items in the Outland that can restrain supreme spirit beasts. If a few people work together to activate that mystical item, they can restrain supreme spirit beasts. Zhou dumbly said. Otherwise, supreme spirit beasts wouldn't have agreed to move into the 100,000 hills. Then how did the Azuras hurt the golden dragon? Do they have mystical items too? Chu Li frowned. Zhou dumbly shook his head. 8 great Azuras worked together to cast a secret skill. They sacrificed 4 great Azuras to severely injure the golden dragon. If it wasn't for me, they wouldn't have been able to do anything to the golden dragon. Great Azuras? Chu Li asked. Are they similar to our enlightened masters? Yes, Zhou dumbly said. These great Azuras are the real immortals. What about the 4 who sacrificed themselves? Zhou dumbly said. They turned into heart of Azura. They need to cultivate again. I'm not sure if they can still become great Azuras. Chu Li sighed. It seems that supreme spirit beasts can't do anything to them. It's enough to kill them once, Zhou dumbly said. They'll need a few hundred years to recover their strength. Chu Li nodded slowly. In his mind, he was trying to deduce the patterns on the heart of Azura. He wanted to see if it was a formation or some kind of strange writing. Go ahead, they've been waiting anxiously. Zhou dumbly waved his hand. Chu Li gave a fist salute and left the basilica. When he returned to Shao Qi and the others, he naturally attracted a lot of questions. Shao Qi could sense that he had been in danger and his life was in danger. Chu Li did not hide much from them. He told them about how he went to the floating mountain to interrogate them about the art of eternal agility and how he was surrounded by celestials and almost lost his life. In the end, he managed to escape with his life. Furthermore, he managed to force out the key to the art of ageless longevity, which could extend his lifespan. After he finished speaking, he bade farewell to the 3 women. He told them to stay at Immortal Attraction Mountain to avoid any danger. Right now, the world was in chaos, and celestials were everywhere. It was safer to stay at Immortal Attraction Mountain. He abruptly returned to his own courtyard in the public house. Xueling was taking care of the spirit herbs and glories will tree in the courtyard. When she felt Chu Li approaching, she stood up. Her white robe was spotless. She gave a fist salute and said, Master, has the public house been quiet lately? Chu Li asked. Xueling said softly, There are no celestials in the territory. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. It seemed that his deterrence was still effective. The celestials did not dare to come to the public house. He gave a few orders and found a few spirit herbs with long lifespan. The spirit herbs in the courtyard were rarely like this. They were usually in the spirit medicine nursery of the public house. Xueling personally went to the spirit medicine nursery and brought 3 grass of immortality. The effect of the grass of immortality was average, but it was quite unique. It was a necessary ingredient for the spirit blessing pill. If it was not harvested, it would continue to grow and grow into an immortal tree. It could grow from a small blade of grass to a towering tree. Chu Li used the art of eternal agility to harvest its essence and take its lifespan. The 3 grass of immortality quickly turned into ashes. He gently exhaled, and they immediately floated away with the wind. They landed on the ground and disappeared without a trace. Xueling stared at him curiously. Chu Li smiled. These 3 grass of immortality increased his lifespan by 100 years. It was really miraculous. The art of eternal agility was really scary. He shook his head as he thought about it. The more powerful the art of eternal agility was, the more difficult it would be to kill Song Wuji. Master? Xueling saw him shaking his head and quickly asked, "Is it not possible?" Chu Li smiled and said, "It's done." Xueling, think of a way to get some seeds of the grass of immortality. Plant about 100 of them. Yes. Xueling nodded and said, "Master, there's another group of protectors in the public house. A few of them are from other public houses." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. The 2 of them left the courtyard, left the island, and floated onto the boat. The boat slowly left the island and left the public house. It then left the public house and the main gate of the public house. They arrived at a restaurant outside Chongming town. Along the way, there were people who fist saluted and greeted Chief Chu from time to time. Chu Li fist saluted and smiled. Xueling followed beside him. Her face was still cold, but her heart was filled with pride. Master did this to calm the hearts of the people. He needed to show his face in the town from time to time to suppress those who had ill intentions. According to his own temper, he could just kill these people. However, Master was kind and kept these people alive. Chu Li and Xueling sat in front of the window on the 3rd floor. The innkeeper personally served them wine and a few dishes to go with the wine. His steps were light and his face was red. Ever since Chu Li killed a celestial in the town, his prestige had risen to another level. The people in the town regarded him as their protector. As a resident of Chongming town, the recognition of the public house was deep in their bones. If Chu Li was not the son-in-law of the public house, there would still be some estrangement. Now, he completely regarded Chu Li as one of them and was deeply supported. Master, what are these people trying to do sneakily? Xueling held the pot and filled Chu Li's silver cup. She frowned and said, "Could it be that they want to see if we can find out?" "Which public house?" Chu Li took a sip of the wine. Xueling said, "All the other 11 public houses, including the Rin public house." As she said this, she glanced at Chu Li and quickly looked away. She knew the inside story. Although Lu Yurong was Chu Li's wife, it was only in name. She was not really one of them. Chu Li pondered and said, "Then don't care about them." "Really?" Xueling was stunned. Chu Li nodded slowly. The 12 public houses must have felt that something was wrong and began to group up. He pondered and said, "Then send a few people to the other public houses and let them find out." "Yes." Xueling nodded lightly. Chu Li sighed. "It's too chaotic outside now. You have to hurry up and cultivate. Don't be too distracted." "Yes." Xueling smiled. "I cultivated very quickly on the island. With the Glories Will tree, her cultivation progress was very fast. Other people cultivated like walking, but her cultivation was like riding a horse. Although it was not as fast as Chu Li's, it was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. After Chu Li and Xueling finished their meal, they walked along the streets of Chongming town and then returned to the public house. Once they reached the public house, they immediately disappeared and returned to Goddess Attraction Mountain. On Goddess Attraction Mountain, Dong Jianxin was lying in the basilica. Coincidentally, Zhou Dunley was not there. Dong Jianxin did not have the strength to ring the bell. After taking the spirit blessing pill, he was being treated by Shao Qi and the other 2 ladies. Chapter 1789. Chu Li appeared in front of Dong Jianxin in a flash and shook his head helplessly. Master and senior brother's luck was not good, and his own luck was not good either. Could it be that Goddess Attraction Mountain was going to be unlucky? "Chu Li, come over and take a look." Lu Yurong called out to Chu Li. "It's probably the work of the enlightened master." Chu Li nodded and went behind Dong Jianxin. Shao Qi took a step back and made way for him. With his right palm on Dong Jianxin's back, Chu Li instantly felt 2 strange forces wreaking havoc in his body, destroying his internal organs. Fortunately, the medicinal power of the spirit blessing pill was sustaining him. However, the medicinal power of the spirit blessing pill would soon dissipate under the influence of the enlightened master's energy. At that time, Dong Jianxin would undoubtedly die. He snorted softly and channeled the true, supreme, Vajra, supreme scripture, to expel the two enlightened masters' energies. A gust of wind began to blow, and the three women's clothes fluttered in the wind, as if they were about to ride the wind back home. Spiritual qi surged and drilled into Dong Jianxin's body, rapidly healing his injuries. After 10 minutes, Dong Jianxin slowly opened his eyes. Chuli smiled. "Brother, you're alive again. Junior brother, you saved me again." Dong Jianxin shook his head helplessly. "I'm too useless as a senior brother." Chuli said, "Why should we bother about this? A heavenly god actually dared to attack you? How strange." Luin Ming and Chun Jinji. Dong Jianxin frowned and said, "I didn't expect them to really dare to make a move. I was caught off guard and was ambushed. Fortunately, I had the precious weapon that Master gave me, so I was lucky enough to escape." "They didn't say anything?" Chuli asked. Dong Jianxin thought for a moment. "I think Chun Jinji said that a mortal attraction mountain isn't the same as it used to be." Chuli immediately understood. The news of the Golden Dragon and Zhou Dunley being severely injured had spread, and all the enlightened masters knew about it. Therefore, they wanted to take this opportunity to deal with Goddess Attraction Mountain. Immortal Attraction Mountain had always been as stable as a rock. Of course, Zhou Dunley's cultivation was deep, but there was also the existence of the Golden Dragon. No one in the world could deal with the Golden Dragon. The Golden Dragon guarded Immortal Attraction Mountain and would not help Immortal Attraction Mountain kill people. Zhou Dunley almost never left Immortal Attraction Mountain. He usually lingered between Immortal Attraction Mountain and the sky beyond heaven. He did not incur any enmity with the other Empyrean gods, so the other Empyrean gods did not dare to cause trouble at Immortal Attraction Mountain. Now that Dong Jianxin had left the mountain, it was their chance. Moreover, Zhou Dunley was also injured. If they could get rid of Dong Jianxin, Zhou Dunley would be in a hurry to enter the Outland. If that happened, the enlightened master's position would fall to someone else, and the other sects of the Fu dynasty would have a chance. As for why it was Chun Jinji and Monk Luin Ming, it was obviously instigated by Tang Su. If Zhou Dunley wanted to take revenge, he could only take revenge on Chun Jinji and Monk Luin Ming. He couldn't do anything to anyone else. Even though Zhou Dunley was a deity of the Goddess Attraction Mountain and could travel back and forth between the sky beyond heaven, he couldn't break this rule. Chun Jinji and Monk Lin Ming dared to make a move because they were certain that Zhou Dunley would not be able to retaliate. His injuries were too severe, and he would soon enter the sky beyond heaven. Chuli shook his head and sighed. It was really a good plan. Not only was Tang Su's scheming behind this, but there was also the shadow of the Celestials. "Junior brother, why isn't our Goddess Attraction Mountain the same as before?" Dong Jianxin asked with a frown. Chuli scoffed. "I'll make them understand that Goddess Attraction Mountain is indeed not the same as before." Dong Jianxin hurriedly said, "Junior brother, I'll take revenge myself. Senior brother, they're not only coming for you, but also our Goddess Attraction Mountain. If we can't take revenge, Goddess Attraction Mountain will be in even more trouble." "I'll be right back," Chuli said. "What are you going to do?" Dong Jianxin hurriedly asked. Chuli smiled. "I'm going to find out who exactly gave them the courage to do this." "Don't do anything," Dong Jianxin said. Chuli nodded. "Don't do anything if you can avoid it. Be polite before resorting to force." Dong Jianxin sighed in relief. He really didn't want his junior brother to take any more risks because of him. It would make him seem too incompetent as a senior brother. It would be more satisfying for him to take revenge himself. Chuli gave the three women a look and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared outside the reincarnation temple and carefully sized it up. After a while, he lightly said, "Luin Ming, and those who are lying in ambush, come out and meet me. Don't be sneaky and lower your status." He had already expected an ambush. Monk Luin Ming was a cunning person. If he didn't take the opportunity to set a trap, he wouldn't be Luin Ming. Namo Amipa. Monk Luin Ming chanted and slowly stepped out of the void. He pressed his palms together and bowed. Almsgiver Chu, we meet again. Chu Li coldly nodded and looked at another old monk beside him. This is my master's junior. Monk Luan Ming smiled. The old monk with white eyebrows and a face as pale as gold paper bowed. I'm Huan Hua. He was thin and wore a loose red robe, like a child wearing an adult's clothes. He had a protruding mouth and monkey cheeks, which made him look rather wretched. Only his triangular eyes were calm and clear, giving him the aura of an eminent monk. Chu Li said, Master Huan Hua is a celestial being, right? Yes. Huan Hua slowly nodded. I've long heard of your name, Almsgiver Chu. My name is also famous in the Outland. Chu Li smiled. Yes. Monk Huan Hua said, in the past 1,000 years, the most successful person was Almsgiver Chu. I didn't expect Almsgiver Chu to succeed. You're the first person in 1,000 years. I'm impressed. Chu Li said, Monk Huan Hua is impressed. You want to kill my senior brother and go against Goddess Attraction Mountain? You're just trying to force me to exchange a few blows, right? Namo Umitba, I didn't know that Luan Ming would make such a stupid move. It's too late for regrets when I found out. Huan Hua shook his head and sighed. Chu Li could not help but laugh. I realized that the monks of the Reincarnation Temple don't even blink when they lie. I don't think there's such a rule. Yes, our temple doesn't abide by the rule of lying, Huan Hua slowly said. Chu Li said, no wonder. If that's the case, then let me have a taste of the monk skills. And Luan Ming, you come at me too. Monk Luan Ming pressed his palms together and bowed. Almsgiver Chu, there's no need to be angry. I've already spared your senior brother's life. Huh. Chu Li laughed out loud and shook his head. He pressed his hand on the sky, regaining sword, and instantly became one with the sword. The sword's aura soared into the sky and went straight for the two monks. Namo Amipa. The two monks pressed their palms together and took out 2 sun and moon chakras. They were only the size of a palm and were crystal clear as if they were carved from black jade. The sun and moon chakras were imprinted with some strange patterns. They must have other uses. Chu Li did not dare to underestimate the sun and moon chakras in their hands. They might even be treasures. Ding! A clear sound lingered in his ears. Chu Li unsheathed his sword and calmly stabbed Monk Luan Ming's heart. He then stabbed Monk Huan Hua's chest and put the sword back into its scabbard, consuming 400 years of his life. Ugh! Monk Luan Ming widened his eyes in disbelief. He knew that Chu Li was strong. Chu Li would be even stronger after becoming an enlightened master. Even the Deva's order could not do anything to him. However, he did not expect that he could not even fight back. Chapter 1790. After the 2 wheels disappeared, Monk Xuan Hua squinted his eyes. His gaze was clear and pure, without a trace of emotion. It was as if he was completely calm. This was the great enlightenment of Buddhism. Chu Li frowned. Xuan Hua, who was in such a state of mind, must be very difficult to deal with. It was unusual that the sword did not kill him. One must know that the sky regaining sword energy not only killed the body, but also the soul. There was almost no chance of survival, even if he was a celestial. Chu Li drew his sword again. The sharp sword energy soared into the sky and slowly stabbed towards Monk Xuan Hua. Namo Amipa. Monk Xuan Hua chanted, and his body began to emit a golden light. The golden light became brighter and brighter, as if a Buddha had descended. His gaze was as calm as water, without sadness or joy. His hands formed a strange mudra. His movements were calm and steady. It seemed slow, but it accurately hit the tip of the sword. Ding! The sky regaining sword trembled slightly. Chu Li felt a strange force entering the tip of the sword like an awl. It went against the flow and entered his body. The purity was beyond imagination. Unfortunately, when it reached his palm, it was blocked by the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra. It tried very hard to enter, but was blocked. A white dot appeared on Monk Xuan Hua's palm. The white dot slowly expanded and engulfed his left hand bit by bit. Finally, his entire left hand disappeared. This white dot was the one that took the sky regaining sword. Although it withstood the attack of the sky regaining sword and did not pierce through, the power of the sky regaining technique was overbearing. It was too murderous, and he could not control it. Namo Amipa. Monk Luan Ming chanted and slowly sat on the ground. He looked at his chest. It was already hollow, but there was no blood flowing out. After Monk Luan Ming formed a mudra, he started chanting solemnly. He was ready to ascend to the outland. He knew that his wound and the energy coming from it were too overbearing. He could not cure it and had to ascend. He turned to look at the reincarnation temple behind him and sighed. Fortunately, he had made careful arrangements before he attacked. The next enlightened master would probably be a disciple of the reincarnation temple. Chuli stared at Monk Xuanhua and watched his left hand disappear. His expression was still calm, and his eyes were emotionless, as if it was not his hand that disappeared. He felt fear in his heart. He had to be on guard against such a person. If he didn't care about his own life, then he wouldn't care about the lives of others either. It was very likely that he would use the secret technique of mutual destruction. He glanced at Monk Luan Ming and frowned even more. Monk Luan Ming's body shone with golden light, just like Monk Huanhua's. Under his solemn appearance, his eyes became calmer and calmer. His emotions slowly faded away, and there was no sadness or joy. This was obviously a great enlightenment. His mental state had advanced to the next level, and his cultivation had also advanced to the next level. To be able to advance to the next level as a heavenly deity, opportunity, luck, and wisdom were all indispensable. Who would have thought that Monk Luan Ming would be so blessed to be able to come back from the brink of death? After advancing to the next level, he would naturally be spared from death. Naturally, Chuli would not allow such a thing to happen. Once again, he unsheathed his regal sky sword and slowly stabbed forward. Just as he was about to stab, Monk Xuanhua suddenly appeared in front of Monk Luan Ming. Namo Amipa. Monk Xuanhua chanted the name of Buddha and slapped the tip of the sword with his remaining right palm. Chuli suddenly took a step back and disappeared. Boom! In a thunderous explosion, Monk Xuanhua disappeared completely as if he had never been there. Only the deep pit on the ground and the surrounding barren land proved that the explosion had happened earlier. Monk Luan Ming's loose red cowl fluttered in the wind as if he was in the middle of a strong wind. His face was as calm as water, and there was no sadness or joy in his eyes. He was not touched by Monk Xuanhua's sacrifice. Chuli suddenly appeared with his hand on the regal sky sword and said, Luan Ming, I really have to congratulate you. Namo Amipa. Monk Luan Ming pressed his palms together and bowed. I was wrong. I was too greedy and failed to live up to the expectations of my ancestral master. It's a sin. Chuli smiled. Severely injuring my master was intentional. It was to kill me, right? Almsgiver Chu is smart. Nothing can be hidden. It's a pity that our painstaking plan could not withstand Almsgiver Chu's sword. Monk Luan Ming said slowly. Chuli said, Monk Luan Ming, you are trying to bewitch me. What other tricks are you waiting for me? Since your ancestral master Deva is dead, what else is there to hide? Monk Luan Ming had a treasure that could block the omniscient mirror's prying. Monk Luan Ming sighed. Almsgiver Chu should be able to guess it. Chunjinji, Chuli scoffed. He originally planned to attack together with you. In the end, he tricked you and made you the vanguard, am I right? Chuli chuckled. Monk, I can't believe there would be a day when someone would plot against you. How satisfying. Clap, clap. Suddenly, 2 claps were heard. Chunjinji stepped out from the void and clapped his hands. His face was full of praise. As expected of Chuli, Chuli frowned and glanced behind him. Since you're here, why don't you come out together? He knew Monk Luan Ming and Chunjinji very well. They always planned before taking action. They were careful and cautious. Once they made a move, they were absolutely confident. Unfortunately, they were seen through by him every time. This time, Chunjinji and Monk Luan Ming dared to attack. Monk Luan Ming had strong support from Monk Xuanhua. Chunjinji definitely had strong support too. Chunjinji sighed. Chuli, why do you have to court death? I'll spare your majesty every time, but not this time. Chuli shook his head. It's fine to plot against me, but you can't plot against senior brother in Goddess Attraction Mountain. Chunjinji laughed disapprovingly. That's what I wanted to say. You've escaped every time. This time, you won't have a chance. Chu smiled and shook his head. You're just a celestial who doesn't dare to come out. Do you think you can kill me? That might not be true. Chunjinji smiled mysteriously. Chu frowned and pulled out his sword. The lifespan obtained from the immortal grass was completely depleted. He slowly stabbed at Chunjinji. His sword energy had already locked the space in advance. Chunjinji could not move and could only watch helplessly as he was stabbed. Ding! Chunjinji suddenly pulled out a short sword from his sleeve and hit the Sky Killer Sword. The Sky Killer Sword let out a clear sound and trembled at the same time. It was like a spirit snake nodding its head and deflected the short sword's stab. An extremely and extremely cold energy came from his sword. His vision blurred as if he had fallen into endless darkness. His body felt like it was sinking and drifting, and he did not know where he was. Chu took a deep breath and immediately regained his clarity. Mahavarokuna's immobility scripture reverberated in his mind, dispersing the strange energy that had entered his mind. Chu frowned and looked at Chunjinji. He hid the short sword in his sleeve again, but it could not escape the observation of the omniscient mirror. At first glance, the short sword looked like a short snake, but upon closer inspection, it was not. The blade was straight and bright. It was neither curved nor evil. It was upright. It was hard to believe that the extremely and evil energy came from the sword. He concluded that the short sword must be a strange item. It was extremely cold, extremely and evil. It could shake one's mind. There did not seem to be such an item in the world. Perhaps it came from the outland. The next moment, he took a step forward and stood in front of Monk Luan Ming. He stabbed a sword into his heart. Chapter 1791. The golden light dissipated and Chu Li appeared 20 feet away. He shook his head and looked at the empty space, as well as Chunjinji, who was pale as paper with blood at the corner of his mouth. Chu Li laughed and pointed at Chunjinji. This is Monk Luan Ming. He even wanted to drag you down with him before he left. Interesting. Chunjinji's expression was ugly as he glared at where Monk Luan Ming exploded. This monk is too narrow-minded. Chu Li smiled. Your Majesty still has the strength to fight, more than enough to kill you. Chunjinji said hatefully. He knew that Chu Li had killed enlightened masters, celestials, and asuras, causing his cultivation level to skyrocket. However, his cultivation level was also skyrocketing, and he felt that he could suppress Chu Li. If he could kill Chu Li, there would be endless benefits. Not to mention becoming famous and stepping into the peak. The benefits promised by the Fu Dynasty's emperor were enough. However, he did not expect Chu Li's cultivation level to skyrocket and still far surpass him. Now that he was injured and the spirit sword in his hand seemed to be useless, he could only use his ultimate move. He was filled with resentment towards Chu Li for always being able to suppress him at such a young age. Chu Li suddenly focused his eyes. His azure blue eyes flashed, and the god-punishing thunder sword stabbed out. Bang! Chunjinji's sleeve suddenly exploded. The sleeve turned into pieces and was swept away by an invisible force. Half of his arm disappeared along with it. His face was gloomy as he stared at Chu Li. Although he did not know how Chu Li did it, it was undoubtedly him. Chu Li also looked at his missing arm in surprise. He was looking at the sword. This sword took the hit for Chunjinji, which was equivalent to saving his life. However, Chunjinji did not seem to know. He could not help but laugh and stabbed out with the god-punishing thunder sword again. Chunjinji originally thought that Chu Li's inner energy exploded the short sword. Now that the god-punishing thunder sword stabbed out, he realized something was wrong, but it was too late. He fell limply and died immediately, without any signs of life. An enlightened master of a generation, the monarch of a nation, had actually died so silently. Chu Li felt a little emotional when he saw this. Under the heavens and earth, even enlightened masters were so weak. Moreover, the god-punishing thunder sword would slay the soul directly. After being killed by the god-punishing thunder sword, the soul would dissipate, and there would be no chance of entering heavens beyond to inherit the sky deity's position. Chu Li had to thank monk Luan Ming's mutual destruction technique, which severely injured Shinjinji. Otherwise, the god-punishing thunder sword wouldn't have been able to kill him so easily. The god-punishing lightning sword suddenly froze and pierced toward a certain spot in the void. Bang! There was a burst of white light as 3 figures stepped out of thin air. They glanced at Shan Jinji's corpse on the ground and stared coldly at Chu Li. What a vicious move. Chu Li calmly looked at the 3 middle-aged men. The middle-aged man at the very front was tall and sturdy, and behind him were 2 short and stout men. Their appearances were exactly the same, and it was obvious that they were twins. Their bodies shone brilliantly, and they were celestials. Chu Li waved his hand and interrupted them. Enough with the idle chatter. Let's do it. It's no big deal to kill a few more celestial beings. Arrogant. The tall and sturdy middle-aged man sneered. If that's the case, then die. The 3 of them shone brightly again, forming a brilliance that enveloped Chu Li. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect the 3 of them to be proficient in a joint attack technique, which was rare among the celestials. The brilliance formed by the 3 of them condensed into one, and it was extremely tyrannical. Chu Li had goosebumps all over his body as he felt a great threat. He disappeared in a flash. The 3 of them followed closely behind. Chu Li furrowed his brows and stopped dodging. He immediately understood that their techniques belonged to the type of superposition and accumulation, just like a snowball that kept growing bigger and bigger. If he kept dodging, it would be more powerful as it went on. It was better to break the attack as soon as possible. He made up his mind and stabbed out with his sword with 500 years of life. This was the limit of the heaven-killing technique, and he couldn't go any further. If he wanted to exceed 500 years of life, he needed to improve the heaven-killing technique to another level, and he couldn't reach this level at the moment. If this sword did not succeed, he could only rely on the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra to escape. Swoosh! The tip of the sword pierced through the brilliance of the 3 of them like ripping silk. Then, the sword pierced into their hearts one by one. The brilliance suddenly burst out, and they were sent flying. 3 rays of brilliance shot up into the sky. The 3 celestial beings had already returned to the outland. Chu Li let out a long sigh of relief and sheathed the heaven-killing sword. Fortunately, he had the grass of immortality to replenish his life. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to kill them all this time. This time, he had completely vented his anger and established his power, intimidating the enlightened masters and celestial beings. As for the Azuras, he didn't count on them. They were immortal and would definitely pester him endlessly. Swoosh! Suddenly, a sword energy pierced his back. This sword was soundless, and he actually didn't notice it. When the sword energy reached his body, he was shocked. He activated the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra and blocked it outside his flesh. He turned around and slapped the sword, sending the person holding the sword flying. It was an old man that he didn't know. The old man was thin and short like a child. His clothes were black, and even his skin was black. His eyes were dim, and his whole body was covered in dust as if he didn't know martial arts. It was no wonder that the sword came without warning and actually avoided his extremely sharp intuition. He felt a strange force coming from the tip of the sword. It was as thin as a needle, and it was about to break through the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra's obstruction. If it was the previous supreme, indestructible body of Vajra, it definitely wouldn't be able to block it. But now, the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra was tough and dense, and it actually blocked the needle force. After the old man spat out a mouthful of blood in the air, he fell limply to the ground. With a thud, he had already passed out. Even if it wasn't the supreme, indestructible palm, a casual palm from him was still shockingly powerful. Chu Li suddenly fell limply to the ground and struggled to get up. In the end, he succeeded. He placed his hand on the hilt of the sword and looked around vigilantly. A loud laughter rang out. A group of people stepped out of the void. The one in the lead was Tang Su. He was dressed in a bright yellow robe, and he looked graceful and luxurious. Behind him stood 20 people, and their bodies were all glowing. They were celestial beings. Chu Li frowned. Could it be that the Grandmaster order still hadn't been withdrawn? So many celestial beings gathered here to kill him. It was really strange. It really is His Majesty's trick. Chu Li nodded slowly. Let Luan Ming and Chun Zhenji be the vanguard to exhaust my energy and then reap the fruits from the back, just like His Majesty used to do in the past. Although it's an old trick, it's fine as long as it's useful. Tang Su sized him up with a smile. Chu Li, to think that you be plotted against one day. It's so satisfying to watch. Chu Li said, isn't it embarrassing for His Majesty to use such a trick? With so many masters around, I really can't beat them. I have to make sure that nothing goes wrong against you. Tang Su waved his hand. At first, I thought that Monk Luan Ming and Chun Jinji would be able to take care of you. In the end, I still have to be careful. Chu Li nodded. I still admire His Majesty's tricks, but how did he get so many celestial beings? We're like-minded, and it just cause enjoys abundant support. Tang Su smiled. Chu Li, seeing that we've been fighting for a long time, I'll let you say a few more words. Chu Li shook his head. Thank you for your kindness, His Majesty. Goodbye. An extremely sharp sword aura suddenly shot out from his body and broke through the space seal before disappearing. More than 10 palm energies hit the direction where he disappeared, but they could not stop him. Chapter 1792. Damn it! The smile on Tang Su's face froze. His initial smugness turned into anger as he clenched his teeth and slammed his palm on the ground. A deep pit silently appeared. The 20 celestial beings looked solemn. Chu Li's martial arts was beyond imagination. After all, the celestial being's heavenly human field had completely locked the space so that he could not escape. It could be said to be foolproof. However, this foolproof method was broken by him. This meant that Chu Li was unrestrained in front of them. He could fight and leave as he pleased. Everyone was in a passive position. He actually escaped. An old man said in a deep voice, "Looks like we need to find more people. Those who can come are here." Tang Su shook his head. Elder Qi, all the celestial beings in the Fu dynasty who are not frightened by Chu Li are here. No one else will come. It can't be. Elder Qi's skin was as dark as iron. He was thin and tall, exuding a tough aura. One look, and one could tell that he was a man of his word. Tang Su smiled bitterly. Chu Li has killed many celestial beings and Azuras. He even forced the Grandmaster's order to withdraw. It's enough to form a strong deterrent. These people are a disgrace to the celestial beings. Chi scoffed in disdain. They let a mere enlightened master be so frivolous. Tang Su nodded without changing his expression. That's right. An unorthodox enlightened master like Chu Li who is not accepted by the Grandmaster should be killed. He shouldn't live in this world. He cursed in his heart. These dog-fart celestial beings were all arrogant and conceited. They thought that they came from the sky beyond heaven, so they looked down on the people of this world like pigs and dogs. How could they not know that in his eyes these dog-fart celestial beings had no brains at all? Chi said coldly, all the more reason for us to kill him. We'll show all the celestial beings that as long as we work together, no one can kill a celestial being. He was furious about the celestial beings being killed. The dignity of the celestial beings could not be violated. They were existences higher than everyone in this world. How could they be beaten down to the mortal world and killed by the people of this world? This was unforgivable. Moreover, the celestial beings would return to the Grandmaster after death. What was there to be afraid of? At most, they would die. That was why they came to kill celestial beings, even though they knew Chu Li was powerful. The celestials following behind him all had the same thought. Tang Su nodded and said, That's right, that's right. Moreover, the most abominable thing about Chu Li is his evil martial arts. He usually kills his enemies until their souls vanish and they can't return to the Grandmaster's boundary. He knew that he shouldn't have said this, but when he saw Chi He's arrogant attitude, He couldn't help but poke at him. His soul was destroyed. Chi's expression changed slightly. As soon as Tang Su saw his expression, he cursed inwardly. Hastily he laughed and said, "This is only a rumor. This kind of martial art must come at a great cost. He might not dare to use it." "I see." Chi nodded slowly. He knew what Tang Su was thinking. Tang Su felt that he was easy to deceive and could easily fool him with a few tricks. However, he didn't know that Tang Su couldn't be bothered to care about these things and couldn't be bothered to play tricks. These little tricks were not worth mentioning at all, so he disdained them. He was too lazy to play these little tricks, but it did not mean that he was stupid. From Tang Su's expression, he knew that what he said was true. Chuli could really destroy a person's soul. In this case, he had to be careful. Dignity was important, but life was more important. He came to this world to recruit soldiers and buy horses to develop more grandmasters. These grandmasters killed each other in the chaos and finally ascended to the grandmaster's boundary, becoming a grandmaster. After recovering their strength, they would become a celestial being and would be a strong support against the azure boundary. This was just a mission. There was no need to lose his life because of battle spirit. The celestial primary was extremely long. Dying here without ascending to heaven would be a great loss. When he thought of this, he had the intention to retreat. Tang Su said, "From what I know, this Chu Li is very narrow-minded. Once you become his enemy, you must kill him as soon as possible to eliminate him completely. Then we can only kill him." Chi nodded and sighed. "He's really a troublesome person." Yes. Tang Su smiled bitterly. "To be honest, Elder Chi, he's not the key. If he didn't have any backing, I would have killed him long ago. I wouldn't have to wait until now." "Goddess Attraction Mountain?" Chi asked. Tang Su nodded forcefully. "That old man Zhou Dunli is not easy to deal with. If I kill Chu Li, Zhou Dunli will definitely kill my children and grandchildren. The gains do not make up for the losses. Now, Zhou Dunli is mostly crippled, and the Golden Dragon is also heavily injured. It will take 80 to 100 years to recover. This is the best opportunity to kill Chu Li. Aren't you afraid that Zhou Dunli will take revenge after he recovers?" Chi smiled faintly. Tang Su scoffed. "Don't we still have everyone? So he's making us take the blame." Chi laughed. Tang Su laughed. "Of course, it's still a little difficult for me to kill Chu Li alone. This kid is getting stronger and stronger. With the help of the Celestials, killing him will be a piece of cake. Now that I look at it, it's really not easy," Chi said. It felt like it was a piece of cake, but in the end, it turned out that hearing about him was not as good as meeting him in person. He was indeed cunning. To be able to escape from the 20 celestial grounds, he was definitely not an ordinary person. The monk can run, but the temple can't. Tang Su smiled. "Let's go straight to Goddess Attraction Mountain." Goddess Attraction Mountain. Chi hesitated for a moment. Goddess Attraction Mountain status was rather special. They could freely enter and exit the Outland and the Heavenly Courtyard. If they really did something to Goddess Attraction Mountain, they would probably be punished for no reason. Tang Su saw his concern and smiled. "Elder Chi, don't worry. You don't have to show yourselves later. I'll lure Chu Li out. Once we reach Goddess Attraction Mountain, everyone will be justified." That's good." Chi, he nodded slowly. "Then let's go to Goddess Attraction Mountain," Tang Su said excitedly. He had long hoped for this day to destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain and topple the only mountain above him. Once Goddess Attraction Mountain was toppled, it would be the Tang family's world. Chu Li suddenly appeared at the 100,000 Hills ice pool in a flash. As soon as he appeared, the surface of the ice pool began to churn. Then, a green dragon slowly floated out of the water and lay lazily on the huge lotus formed by the pool water. Another huge water lotus appeared as well. It was the vitality-devouring tortoise lying on top of it. It had regained its hill-sized appearance and was lazily poking its head out. Chuli could not help but laugh. He did not expect them to be here, especially the vitality-devouring tortoise, which should be lying on Black Tortoise Mountain. He quickly read the reason from the vitality-devouring tortoise's mind. It wanted to come back for a breather before going back. How willful. He went forward and touched the tortoise's shell. The green dragon lazily stretched its body. A green light flashed gracefully. Chuli saw that they were progressing slowly. It would still take a long time for them to reach rank 1. However, once his cultivation level was higher, he could help them cultivate faster. They would soon reach rank 1. However, he did not come here to improve their cultivation level this time. He still wanted to find spirit herbs. At this moment, a clear whistle was heard. The green dragon and the vitality-devouring tortoise immediately twisted their bodies uneasily. Then, they were carried back into the ice pool by the water lotus. The next moment, a red shadow flashed and the little vermilion bird appeared. She immediately jumped onto Chu Li's shoulder. Her voice rang in his mind. "You still dare to come back?" Chu Li smiled. "Why not?" Chapter 1793. Enlightened masters can't enter the 100,000 hills. Why? Chu Li frowned. "That's the rule. Why would there be a reason?" The little vermilion bird said impatiently. "Enlightened masters can't enter anyway. As long as they do, they must be killed. You're already here. You're going to die." Chu Li frowned. "Isn't this too overbearing?" "That's how it is." The little vermilion bird scoffed proudly. "The 100,000 hills is the territory of spirit beasts. Humans are not allowed to enter. But as long as you're not an enlightened master, it doesn't matter if you come in, as long as you can get out." Chu Li said, "If that's the case, there will be spirit beasts coming to kill me soon?" "Yes." The little vermilion bird nodded and smiled. "Why aren't you escaping?" "Before I escape, there's something first," Chu Li said. "I wonder if you can help me find a spirit herb with an exceptionally long lifespan." "An exceptionally long lifespan?" The little vermilion bird tilted its head and thought, "What do you want that for?" "Of course, there's a use for it," Chu Li said. The little vermilion bird tilted its head and thought, "I can't give you precious spirit herbs, but as long as it has a long lifespan, there's one called the 10,000-year pine tree. That one." It turned and rushed to another towering peak. The peak towered into the sky. It was huge and majestic. Half of the mountain was covered by white clouds. One could only see the lush greenery below the mountainside. It was full of vitality. It was refreshing to look at it. It also gave one a sense of awe. The lush greenery originated from the dense pine forest. Almost all of it was green pines. "Which one is the 10,000-year pine tree?" Chu Li pointed. "That's them," the little vermilion bird said. "Other than their long lifespan, they're useless. None of the spirit beasts in the 100,000 hills like them. Their pine seeds are especially unpalatable." Chu Li nodded. "Thank you." He suddenly appeared at the foot of the giant peak and entered the pine forest. His vision swayed as if there was an earthquake. His body swayed as if he was drunk. The little vermilion bird, who was hovering 100 feet above him and looking down at him, let out a proud cry, feeling very satisfied. Chu Li hurriedly held his breath and soon realized that it was not due to breathing, but from his pores, so he sealed his pores. Once the pores were locked, it was equivalent to being isolated from the outside world. It was difficult for poisonous gas to enter, and after that, it was difficult for spiritual energy to enter as well. An enlightened master would lose half of his cultivation and could only rely on the inner energy in his body. Activating the omniscient mirror, Chu Li realized that there were green vines crawling toward his feet. Upon closer inspection, he realized that it was a thin snake. Its entire body was green, just like the green vines around it. He lightly stamped his foot, and immediately an invisible force spread out. However, the thin snake did not slow down and continued to crawl forward. It was only a meter away from the boot. He shook his head. With a flash of his sword, the snake's head fell off, but the snake's body was still climbing up his boots. Chu Li took 2 steps back to avoid it. Although the snake's body was headless, it still continued to move forward. After climbing up a pine tree, it twisted quickly and forcefully squeezed into the pine tree, leaving only a thin mark. Chu Li shook his head. He did not expect this thin snake to be so powerful. After exhaling twice to expel the poisonous gas, he woke up and looked at the surrounding pine trees. He looked up at the little vermilion bird who was staring at him, shook his head, and said to it in his mind, "You're biting the hand that feeds you." "Humph. You came running over before I could say anything. What are you blaming me for?" The little vermilion bird was dissatisfied. Chuli smiled and did not refute. The little vermilion bird was obviously doing this on purpose, using his anxiety to set up a trap. Other than the thin snake, there was also a small insect above the pine trees, which gave him goosebumps. He slapped a pine tree with his left palm and activated the ageless longevity technique. The pine tree quickly withered. Chuli let go of his hand, but did not directly cut off its vitality and take away all its life force. Swallowing spirit herbs was different from pine trees. Spirit herbs were already pulled out and ready to be used as medicine. Even if he did not swallow it, it would still be used for medicine refinement. However, the pine tree was still alive. Although it was nothing, he still felt uncomfortable. When the pine tree showed signs of wilting, he let go of his hand and switched to another one. In the blink of an eye, he had slapped more than 10,000-year-old pine trees. These pine trees really had 10,000 years of life force. He had already swallowed 100 years of life force from each tree and could not swallow anymore. The ageless longevity technique was not difficult to swallow without limit. Almost 1,000 years of life was the limit. He secretly felt that it was a pity. This way, he could not use the sky killer sword too many times. He lowered his head and plucked a few saplings, broke a few branches, and picked up a few pine cones. He was going to bring them back to his courtyard and plant them under the glories will tree to swallow life force. "Let's go." The little vermilion bird suddenly shouted, "They're here." Chuli knew what it meant. The supreme spirit beasts were about to appear. The little vermilion bird saw Chuli calmly pick up the pine cones and anxiously shouted, "Hey, you're going to be killed if you don't leave." Chuli shook his head and smiled. If the supreme spirit beasts really wanted to kill him, they would come as soon as he appeared. The supreme spirit beasts had sharper senses than him. It was obvious that they did not appear for a long time. The little vermilion bird scoffed, "Don't blame me if you die. I've already sent you a message." Thank you. Chuli smiled. The little vermilion bird turned its head and scoffed. Chuli suddenly appeared in front of the ice pond. He saw that the supreme spirit beasts had no intention of appearing, so he waved at the azure dragon and the vitality devouring tortoise. He then bid farewell to the little vermilion bird and disappeared again. When he returned to his courtyard in the High Duke's public house, Shui was reading some dossiers in the courtyard. When she saw him return, she went forward to welcome him. Chuli instructed her to make the pine cones, and pine saplings alive. He had great use for them. Then, he suddenly disappeared and reappeared at Goddess Attraction Mountain. Goddess Attraction Mountain towered between heaven and earth. It was shrouded in clouds and mist, faintly exuding an aura of immortals. It did not seem like a mountain of the human world, but a mountain of immortals. That was how Goddess Attraction Mountain got its name. Outside Goddess Attraction Mountain, Tang Su was alone. His bright yellow robe fluttered as he stared at Goddess Attraction Mountain with his hands behind his back. His mind was racing as he thought about the consequences of this attack. Overthrowing Goddess Attraction Mountain was the Tang family's long-cherished wish. It was the obsession of every generation of the Tang family's ancestors. As the enlightened masters of the Fu dynasty, the Tang family was in charge of a nation, yet they could not match up to Goddess Attraction Mountain. It was a great humiliation. Therefore, every enlightened master of the Tang family wanted to overthrow Goddess Attraction Mountain and suppress it. However, Tang Su had a greater ambition. He wanted to defeat and destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain in one fell swoop. Once Goddess Attraction Mountain was destroyed, there would naturally be another imperial emperor, but he would not be as powerful as Goddess Attraction Mountain. He would not be able to match the Tang family of the Fu dynasty. However, Goddess Attraction Mountain was not built by luck. There was no lack of outstanding ancestors, but none of them succeeded. Could he succeed? As soon as his suspicions arose, they were magnified. After a long time, he gritted his teeth and swept away his doubts. Now was the time of chaos, and Goddess Attraction Mountain was at its weakest. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he did not seize it, he would not be able to face his ancestors when he entered the Outland. When he thought of this, he became determined again. He took a deep breath and took out 10 jade talismans. Chapter 1794. He had spent a lot of effort to obtain these crystal-clear jade talismans from the Great One Palace. They were formation-breaking talismans that the Great One Palace did not distribute to outsiders, and their power was far beyond that of ordinary formation-breaking talismans. With these formation-breaking talismans, no matter how powerful the formation on Goddess Attraction Mountain was, it was enough to break it. An ordinary formation would not be able to stop an enlightened master, who could pass through formations at will. Unfortunately, Goddess Attraction Mountain's formation was different. Its spiritual energy was drawn from the outland, so it could stop an enlightened master. At this thought, he channeled his energy into the jade pendant, and it shone brightly like a bright moon in his hand. He tossed it into the air, followed by the second and third talismans. These formation-breaking talismans hovered in the air until he had activated 10 formation-breaking talismans and tossed them into the air one by one. Then, he made him a draw with both hands and shouted, "Break!" The 10 jade pendants shot out and landed on Goddess Attraction Mountain in different directions. 200 meters away from Goddess Attraction Mountain, they each crashed into an invisible light shield. Under the stimulation of the formation-breaking talismans, a faintly discernible light shield appeared outside Goddess Attraction Mountain. The 10 formation-breaking talismans shone brightly and drilled into the light shield like awls. The light flickered continuously as if they were exerting more force, and the light shield grew brighter. Tang Su frowned as he stared at the light shield. He also looked nervously at the top of Goddess Attraction Mountain to see if the golden dragon had appeared above the clouds. He turned to look behind him and saw 20 celestial beings hidden in the void. Tang Su vaguely felt that these celestial beings' attitudes were wavering, as if they were hesitant to participate. This cast a shadow over his heart. If everything went smoothly, they would naturally participate, but if things went awry, these celestial beings might not do anything and only watch from the sidelines. They might even add insult to injury. He suddenly felt slightly regretful that he had underestimated these celestial beings, which led to the current situation. When Chuli escaped, he should have disbanded immediately and secretly come to Goddess Attraction Mountain. However, it was too late to regret now, so he could only continue. The light shield grew brighter until it seemed solid, like a golden eggshell that enveloped Goddess Attraction Mountain. No matter how the 10 formation-breaking talismans drilled into it, it did not budge. Tang Su was not anxious. These 10 array-breaking talismans were not ordinary. As time passed, they would absorb more and more spiritual qi. Moreover, he was not naive enough to think that these 10 array-breaking talismans could break the Immortal Attraction Mountain's array formation. Seeing that no one from Goddess Attraction Mountain had appeared yet, it was clear that the situation was not good for them. They could only adopt a defensive stance. They might even be fleeing to avoid being annihilated. Thinking of this, he was excited. It seemed like Chuli was not in the mountain, or perhaps he was recuperating from his injuries. His chances of success must be very high, and it would not be a waste for him to cultivate such a miraculous skill. This time, he must eliminate Chuli. If he could not eliminate Chuli, how could he talk about unifying the Fu dynasty and the world? His heart was steaming hot. Suddenly, he made a few hand gestures and placed them on the 10 formation-breaking talismans. The formation-breaking talismans glowed even brighter, stimulating the Immortal Attraction Mountain's golden eggshell to shine even brighter. He floated up and floated in the air, looking for a weak point in the array formation. Every array formation had its own weakness, a life gate and a death gate. Just like the cross-training mantra, there would always be a weakness. These 10 formation-breaking talismans could not break the array formation, but they could allow him to see the actual situation of the array formation. He could find a weak point, attack it, and find a gap to enter. A moment later, his eyes lit up, his figure disappeared in a flash, and he appeared halfway up the mountain. This place was shrouded by the array formation, and he could not see what was going on inside. However, he knew that this was a weak point, and the golden eggshell was exceptionally thin here. He then took out a black stone from his bosom. This stone was completely black, as if it was dyed with ink. It even swallowed the surrounding sunlight, giving off a sense of danger. Tang Su took a deep look at this inkstone and threw it at the weak point. The inkstone fell silently and exploded with a bang, turning into a cloud of black smoke that shrouded that area. Tang Su's body tensed up, and he prepared for a thunderous attack. Once the array formation was broken, it would be a bloody battle. Even if all the disciples of Goddess Attraction Mountain escaped, they would definitely stay behind to cover the retreat. Although there were only 2 inner mountain disciples of Goddess Attraction Mountain, and the rest were not considered true disciples of Goddess Attraction Mountain, it was not certain that they would not risk their lives to stop him. He only wanted to kill Chu Li and Zhou Dunli. As long as he killed the 2 of them, the remaining Dong Jianxin was not worth mentioning. Bang! There was a muffled sound, and the black smoke dissipated without a sound. The weak eggshell was still there, unaffected. Tang Su immediately frowned. This inkstone was a spirit-fusing stone, and it was the most powerful at swallowing spirit energy. If such a stone fell, it would be enough to completely swallow the spirit energy of a mountain, and it was especially good at swallowing the spirit energy of arrays. The spirit-fusing stone was a Grandmaster's item. He had paid a great price to obtain it from a celestial, but he did not expect it to be ineffective. His expression was solemn. He did not expect to fall at this step. There were 2 possibilities for such a situation. One was that there was a problem with the spirit-fusing stone, and the other was that there was a problem with this array. He thought about it, and felt that there should be no problem with the spirit-fusing stone. The problem was the array formation. He had felt that something was not quite right before, but now he suddenly realized that it was too easy for him to find the weakness. Goddess Attraction Mountain's array formation was rarely used, and because of the Golden Dragon, no one dared to act presumptuously at Goddess Attraction Mountain. So few people knew its depth. Now it seemed that this array formation was more mysterious than he had imagined. In reality, it was illusory, and illusory was real. It seemed to be a weakness, but it was not really a weakness. It might even be a strength. He gritted his teeth and thought about it. He took out another item from his bosom, but it was a short sword. The blade was black and lusterless. It looked as if it was forged from spirit-fusing stone. This was the spirit-fusing sword. It was more powerful than spirit-fusing stone because it had a unique heart technique to complement it. It could unleash a greater power, and no enlightened master could block it if it pierced through. An enlightened master's God's field and spiritual energy were useless before this sword. It could enter with a momentum. If it directly pierced the opponent's vital parts, it was very likely to kill the enlightened master. Even if it could not kill the enlightened master, he could use his own strength to kill the opponent after being heavily injured. This was also one of the reasons why he dared to face Chu Li. Unfortunately, Chu Li was cunning and ran as soon as he saw him, so he did not have a chance to use it. Now that things had come to this, he could only use it here. Otherwise, if he could not break the array formation, how could he attack Goddess Attraction Mountain and destroy it? He once again floated around Goddess Attraction Mountain, trying to find a flaw. Finally, he stopped at the brightest and thickest spot. Golden light flickered, and it was so thick that it seemed solid, as if it was an eggshell forged from real gold. He channeled his energy into the sword, and the pitch-black blade suddenly shot out a pure black sword ray. It was so black that it was pure, without a trace of impurity. The short sword, which was as long as a forearm, stabbed into the thick golden light. Yin Bo. Li Bo. Li Bo. Li Bo. How arrogant I am. Private Emu temple suddenly. The golden eggshell shook violently, and the golden light flickered as if a sleeping dragon had been awakened. The intense shaking and flashing golden light became brighter and brighter, dazzling everyone. Kacha! A crisp sound came from the pitch-black blade. He felt a strong recoil from the blade, and his right hand was about to be repelled. Moreover, the blade seemed to be groaning, unable to withstand the powerful counterattack of the array formation. This sword was related to killing Chu Li, so it must not be destroyed. He was shocked by the power of Goddess Attraction Mountain's array formation, so he rushed forward. Chapter 1795. He was overjoyed. In front of him was a valley surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. It was incomparably quiet and overgrown with weeds. Obviously, there was no one here usually. He came without a sound, which was perfect for a sneak attack. As soon as he thought of this, his expression changed. Chu Li, Zhou Dunli, and Dong Jinshin stood above the valley, looking down at him with a smile, a mocking smile on their faces. Just as he was about to speak, Chu Li took a step forward and appeared in front of him. The heaven-regaining sword surged toward him like a vast ocean crashing down. He wanted to move, but realized that he was powerless to do so. A strong sense of unwillingness rose in his heart. He still had the time to use his mystical arts and the fused spirit sword that he had yet to display. He came here full of confidence. Was he going to die under Chu Li's sword in the end without being able to display one move? He used his most powerful secret technique to activate his potential, but it was already too late. The sword had already lightly slashed across his neck. He felt a chill on his neck, and his vision darkened. He was swallowed by the darkness, and he didn't know anything. Everything was over. Chu Li lightly shook the sky, regaining sword, and returned it to its scabbard, calm and composed. He looked at Tang Su's decapitated body and shook his head emotionally. The two of them had been entangled for so long, but in the end, he had still killed Tang Su. He suddenly felt a little melancholy in the face of life and death. So what if he was a heavenly deity? Even if he defied the heavens and became a deity, he actually wasn't that much stronger than Tang Su. You killed him just like that. Dong Jinshin pointed to Tang Su on the ground and looked at Zhou Dunli. Zhou Dunli's face was ruddy and had already returned to normal. He only sighed, what a pity. After all, he was the ruler of the Fu dynasty. It was a pitiful ending for him to die with his head separated from his body. Chu Li smiled. Master, there's no need to pity such a person. He wanted to destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain and hit us while we were down. If we don't kill him, how can we serve as a warning to future generations? Goddess Attraction Mountain hasn't shown its edge for too long, giving others the impression that we can be bullied. This time, Zhou Dunli sighed and shook his head. Before he could say anything, there was a muffled bang. The golden eggshell suddenly exploded, and 20 celestials appeared in front of the valley. There was an old man standing in the air above the 20 celestials, and he looked somewhat similar to Tang Su. Zhou Dunli's expression changed slightly. Tang Jiang. The old man's ruddy and clean face was tense. He made a hand seal with both hands and shot a stream of spiritual energy toward the corpse on the ground. The spiritual energy quickly drilled into the corpse, and a moment later, Tang Su's corpse began to float. Eventually, it turned into a beam of light and shot into the sky. A door of light slowly opened in the sky, and Tang Su's figure appeared in front of it. Inside the huge door, one could vaguely see flying eaves, pavilions, and lotus flowers. One could vaguely see heavenly maidens floating gracefully. Tang Su looked down at Chu Li. The distance seemed to be unable to obstruct his gaze. Chu Li could read the meaning in his eyes. Tang Su would wait for him when he reached the Grandmaster's boundary. Chu Li shook his head, smiled, and gave a fist salute. He didn't expect this elder to be so powerful. The heaven-slaughtering sword was about to destroy Tang Su's soul. Just as his soul was about to dissipate, this Tang Jiang appeared just in time. A streak of spiritual energy healed his soul's injuries, allowing him to ascend to the heavens. Tang Jiang, why did you come down? Zhou Dunli's expression was solemn. He said slowly, aren't you afraid of violating the heavenly rules? Young Zhou, it's not up to you to decide whether I'm violating the heavenly rules or not. Tang Jiang's cold gaze swept past him, and then fell on Chu Li. What a vicious child. Chu Li gave a fist salute and said nothing. Chu Li, this is Tang Su's great-grandfather. Zhou Dunley said in a low voice. He's also a powerful figure in the Grandmaster's boundary. I didn't expect him to descend to the mortal world. Chuli smiled. Master, are the Celestials descending according to their own will? There's a quota limit, Zhou Dunley said. Every sect has a quota. Chuli frowned. Zhou Dunley shook his head. Because of the merits achieved in the Grandmaster's boundary. Chuli said, if it's someone like Song Wuji who achieved outstanding military merits, wouldn't he descend whenever he wants? Wouldn't the world be in chaos? There are realms for Celestials too. Zhou Dunley said gently. For someone of Song Wuji's realm to descend to the mortal world, the merits required are shocking. The gains do not make up for the losses. Unless Great Azura descends, only someone like Song Wuji will descend. If that's the case, it's still possible. Chuli nodded slowly. Tang Jiang remained silent, as if he was watching the master and disciple talk coldly. He allowed them to ignore him and did not seem to be in a hurry to make a move. Chuli turned his head and said, Senior, you must be a very high rank among the Celestials? Tang Jiang is rank 4, Zhou Dunley said. He's considered a high rank among the Celestials. I didn't expect him to descend to the mortal world. Tang Jiang, what are you planning? What do you think? Tang Jiang said, your master won't descend to the mortal world. Young Zhou, you should just give up. You want to destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain? Zhou Dunley frowned. If it were you, would you let go of this opportunity? Tang Jiang said, the Golden Dragon is injured and can't fight. Your master is also heavily injured and won't be able to recover within 100 years. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Of course, I'll destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain. Aren't you afraid of my master and grandmaster seeking revenge? Zhou Dunley scoffed. So what if they seek revenge? Tang Jiang laughed coldly. Do you really think we're afraid of Goddess Attraction Mountain? If it weren't for the Golden Dragon, we would have attacked long ago. Zhou Dunley shook his head. Who said the Golden Dragon is injured? Ha! Tang Jiang laughed. Young Zhou, you've learned to do this too. Zhou Dunley suddenly let out a long howl. The howl was long and reverberated in the sky. It was like a wave slowly spreading out, calm and determined, not letting go of any spot. Tang Jiang frowned. A dragon's roar came from the sky. Then, a golden light flashed above the clouds. In the blink of an eye, a golden dragon shuttled through the clouds and soon arrived. The immense dragon force covered the sky and the earth, suppressing everyone present to the point that they could not breathe. Chuli took a deep breath. This supreme spirit beast spiritual force was really overbearing. The enlightened master's field was compressed into a ball and almost returned to his body. Fortunately, he had the supreme, indestructible body of Vajra and could calmly stand where he was. He took a step in front of Dong Jianxin and was about to reach out and put his hand on his shoulder to help him resist the Golden Dragon's spiritual force. However, Dong Jianxin activated the dragon taming technique. The spiritual force turned pressure into compatibility and enveloped him. Seeing this, Chuli stopped using the Supreme Diamond Supreme Scripture and used the dragon taming technique instead. The little beast in the void of his mind suddenly let out a soft howl. The spiritual force that was approaching Chu Li suddenly shrank and was absorbed by Chu Li. In the blink of an eye, it entered the void of his mind. The little beast opened its mouth and sucked in the spiritual force of the spiritual force field. The originally dispirited little beast suddenly became energetic. Chu Li was secretly shocked. This little beast actually devoured the spiritual force field. However, when he saw the little vermilion bird earlier, its spiritual force field was also very strong, but the little beast did not respond. Could it be that it only devoured the spiritual force field of supreme spirit beasts and was a picky eater? How is this possible? Tang Jiang's face was gloomy. He stared at the golden dragon floating 100 meters in the void. Zhou Dunley shook his head and sighed. Everyone knows that our Goddess Attraction Mountain is protected by the Golden Dragon, but they don't know that there are 2 Golden Dragons. In the future, there may be 3. Impossible, Tang Jiang shouted. How noble and proud are the golden dragons. To have one is already a great fortune. How can there be two? Chapter 1796. Joke dumbly shook his head and said, "Everyone knows that Goddess Attraction Mountain is protected by the golden dragon. It is thanks to second forefathers' protection." Not bad, Tang Jiang said solemnly. If it weren't for Hu Ji Tsai, your immortal Attraction Mountain wouldn't be what it is today. Everyone has been blinded by this golden dragon. I'm not talented, but I've also raised a golden dragon, Zhou dumbly said calmly. It's just that no one knows about this golden dragon. You? Tang Jiang looked at him doubtfully and said coldly, "You managed to cultivate a golden dragon. I'm just lucky. It's really nothing special." Zhou dumbly smiled and said, "I've been hiding all this time just for today." Tang Jiang, you've come to die. You dare to kill me? Tang Jiang sneered. If you kill me, the Tang family will definitely give your master a fatal blow. Master can handle it, Zhou dumbly said. Without waiting for Tang Jiang to reply, he raised his head and glanced at the golden dragon. The golden dragon could clearly see Zhou dumbly's face from 200 meters away. It nodded lightly and let out a mighty dragon roar. The dragon's roar pierced through his ears like a long awl piercing through the top of his head, from the top of his head to the small intestine. His entire body was suddenly connected, and all his inner energy seemed to be pouring out through this connected passage. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation base disappeared. Chuli was shocked. He did not expect the dragon's roar to have such a magical effect. He hurriedly channeled the true, supreme, titanium, supreme scripture. Spiritual energy poured down from the sky and into his body, restoring his cultivation level. He heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Tang Jiang and the 20 celestial beings. The bodies of the 20 celestial beings shone brightly as they struck out with their palms. Tang Jiang's face was ashen as he glared at the golden dragon. He slowly pushed out his palms, and with every inch he pushed out, his body became thinner and shorter. It was as if all the energy in his body had drilled into his palms. When he straightened his palms, his body had already withered and became short and skinny, as if he had become a child. He had actually become shorter and skinnier by half. It was truly a strange sight. Zhou dumbly stared at Tang Jiang solemnly, not in a hurry to make a move. This golden dragon was not his own golden dragon. It was the golden dragon that had always protected Goddess Attraction Mountain. It was a senior figure, and he had no right to order it around. He could only let the golden dragon do as it pleased. Fortunately, he also had a golden dragon. For the sake of that golden dragon, the golden dragon only acted according to his will. Otherwise, it would have killed Tang Jiang and the other celestials as soon as it appeared. Bang! A heaven-shaking, earth-shattering boom rang out as Tang Jiang was sent flying into the distance, disappearing without a trace. Chuli frowned. Just as he was about to give chase, he heard a loud bang. Tang Jiang was torn into pieces. A ray of light shot into the sky and entered the slowly opening divine gate. It was Tang Jiang's figure. Chuli looked at the golden dragon in confusion. He did not understand why it wanted to keep Tang Jiang's soul. Suddenly, he understood that Tang Jiang's secret skill was not to resist the golden dragon's spiritual energy, but to break free. It could make his soul stronger and faster so that he could escape from his body and return to the heavens beyond heaven. As long as he returned to the heavens beyond heaven, the celestials could be resurrected. Although his cultivation level would be gone, the heavens beyond heaven could cultivate very quickly. Once his state of mind was right, it would not be difficult for him to recover his martial arts. The celestials gathered together and floated in the air. The lights merged with each other, and the celestial field became one. It looked like a celestial was exuding a powerful force, resisting the spiritual energy. Chu Li's omniscient mirror saw the existence of this spiritual energy. It was like molten gold that was getting closer. The celestial field could only slow down its speed, but it could not change its direction. Chuli did not expect the golden dragon to be so powerful. It was even more powerful than the supreme rank spirit beasts he had seen before. It seemed that the supreme rank spirit beasts did not really want to kill him. They were forcing him to agree to the conditions to kill Song Wuji. Chuli guessed that Song Wuji must have devoured many spirit beasts. That was why he was hated by the supreme rank spirit beasts and wanted to kill him. However, he wanted to know why they did not do it themselves. Master, is it okay to kill them all? Dong Jianxin asked Zhou Dunli in a low voice. Zhou Dunli shook his head. They invaded Goddess Attraction Mountain. They can't say anything even if they are killed. There's someone behind them. Could it be? Dong Jianxin said worriedly. Zhou Dunli scoffed. Goddess Attraction Mountain is not weak either. If it weren't for the Golden Dragon, Goddess Attraction Mountain would have been in danger. He felt a lingering fear when he thought of this. Fortunately, he had a backup plan and hit a golden dragon. Everyone thought that the golden dragon he was riding was this golden dragon. They did not know that this golden dragon was not something he could ride. Chuli asked, Master, devas have different levels. Are Azuras the same? Of course. Zhou Dunli said slowly. Chuli, don't be careless. Don't think that you can restrain Azuras. You should know that the Azuras you killed before were of a low level. If you encounter a high-level Azura, you must be careful. Chuli nodded. Zhou Dunli said, Don't be careless. High-level Azuras can recover in an instant no matter how serious their injuries are. Think about it. The opponent's cultivation level is high. Moreover, every move they make is suicidal. They are not afraid of death. No matter how serious their injuries are, they can recover in an instant. If not for that, the Golden Dragon would not have been so badly injured. Master, and I would not have been so badly injured. Honorable Master is also heavily injured? Dong Jianxin asked hurriedly. Is he all right? Master's injuries are even more serious. Zhou Dunli frowned. There's only hope for recovery after 100 years of isolation. This group of great Azuras is too vicious. Chuli nodded slowly. He was even more determined to derive the patterns on the heart of Azura. It seemed that he still had to kill a group of Azuras to see if the patterns on the other heart of Azura were different. If he could understand the secret of the heart of Azura and find a way to restrain it, then he would be truly powerful. Although the Heavenly Star Insight technique was strong, it seemed that it needed to be improved. He did not know where he could find such a secret skill. While he was lost in his thoughts, the devas continued to hold on. Suddenly, they began to make strange sounds. Chuli was stunned. He felt a sense of familiarity. He suddenly thought of the prayer he saw in the bronze bell of Goddess Attraction Mountain. The prayer they were chanting was the prayer he saw. It was neither a Buddhist nor a Taoist scripture. It was not a long prayer, but it was indescribably solemn and sacred from the devas' mouths. Suddenly, the void shook and shook. It was as if there was a gust of wind on the sea. Zhou Dunli frowned. Dong Jianxin hurriedly asked, What's wrong, Master? They're calling for help. Zhou Dunli scoffed. They're calling for help from the outland. As soon as he finished speaking, a gap appeared in the void. A white light shone down. The white light was as bright as lightning. It was the size of a small pond. It shrouded the devas. The golden dragon roared angrily. It opened its mouth and spat out another spiritual energy at the white light. The white light flickered and then disappeared. Following the disappearance of the white light, the 20 devas also disappeared. Chuli turned to look at Zhou Dunli. Zhou Dunli bowed to the golden dragon. The golden dragon roared and looked up at the sky. Then, with a flash of golden light, it disappeared without a trace. Dong Jianxin hurriedly asked, Master, they escaped? Chapter 1797. Dong Jianxin asked, Master, what kind of secret skill is this? Why is it so powerful? Sky chant. Zhou Dunli shook his head. These 20 celestials should be from the same sect. I really can't tell which sect they are from. After using the sky chant, they could go straight to the outland. The sect in the outland used a secret skill to bring them back. This must be very taxing, right? Chuli asked. Zhou Dunli nodded. This guiding force needs to be refined using a secret skill. It's very taxing. Unless there's a very important person, they wouldn't use this skill. Chu Li frowned. If that's the case, there's someone important among these 20 celestials? It's probably someone important in their sect, Zhou Dunley said. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used this secret skill. If that's the case, this sky chant. Chu Li pondered. Zhou Dunley said, using the sky chant can go straight to the heavenly courtyard and the sound can travel to the outland. This secret skill is amazing. Chu Li smiled and pretended not to understand. What about our bronze bell? The bronze bell is engraved with this secret skill. Zhou Dunley smiled. This was done by our ancestors. It's very important to Goddess Attraction Mountain. Without this skill, once we step into the outland, it's hard to know the situation. Chu Li nodded slowly. He guessed the reason. Stepping into the outland would cut off their perception of this world. Even if Goddess Attraction Mountain was in danger, they would not know in the outland. Chu Li looked up at the sky. The golden dragon it's arrogant. How can it suffer such a loss? It might chase to the outland and settle the score with these people. Zhou Dunley shook his head and smiled bitterly. Don't worry about it. It won't suffer. Chu Li sighed. Once it leaves Goddess Attraction Mountain, if the golden dragon was lured away, Goddess Attraction Mountain would lose its protection. If the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, that would be real trouble. You mean? Zhou Dunley frowned, and his expression changed. We have to be careful. Dong Jianxin looked at them blankly. Zhou Dunley said, Jianxin, go back first. Master, what? Dong Jianxin was puzzled. Chu Li said, there might be powerful masters coming. Senior brother, you should hide first. Dong Jianxin was startled. He wanted to insist on staying behind to defend against the enemy, but then he thought of his own martial arts. He shook his head helplessly and sighed. All right, master, junior brother, I will stay with Miss Xiao and the others. Zhou Dunley nodded in satisfaction. Although the eldest disciple's aptitude was not as good as Chu Li's, he was kind-hearted and pure. Moreover, he was aware of the situation and would not make a fuss over his own pride. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. It's too late. As soon as his voice fell, a muffled bang resounded. The golden light that enveloped the immortal attraction mountain shook violently. Just as Zhou Dunley was about to make a move, a round hole suddenly appeared in the golden light in front of him. It was as if someone had cut a hole in an eggshell. The void trembled, and 20 people flashed out. After they appeared, the circular hole behind them slowly closed, and the golden light once again enveloped the immortal attraction mountain. Chu Li's gaze sharpened slightly. This was obviously a strange technique used to break formations. It was different from a formation-breaking talisman, but it was more ingenious. The formation-breaking talisman had to fight against the entire formation, but this technique only cut a part of the formation. The resistance encountered was countless times smaller, but it was not easy to perform such an ingenious technique. Otherwise, all formations in the world could be broken. The Great One Palace was the only one in the world who could break formations in such an ingenious way. Chu Li's gaze swept across the 20 people. He knew that there must be a master from the Great One Palace among them. The 20 people stood in the void and looked at Zhou Dunley and the others in silence. Chu Li's gaze fell on a handsome young man in a green robe, and a faint smile appeared on his face. The handsome young man in a green robe smiled bitterly and looked at him helplessly. This person was Li Xinghe, who Chu Li had sent from King An's imperial residence to Stargazing Pavilion to plot against Song Jifan. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror and saw through Li Xinghe's thoughts. Li Xinghe wanted to tell Chu Li in advance, but unfortunately, he did not have the chance. This time, a senior deva from Stargazing Pavilion had descended to preside over the operation against Immortal Attraction Mountain. As a most outstanding disciple of Stargazing Pavilion, he did not know about this operation at all. By the time he found out, he had already set off. When he saw Chu Li, he felt rather awkward and helpless. He really wanted to inform Chu Li that he could not let Chu Li die for the sake of the Heavenly Astral Jade Medallion and the Heaven Power Compass. Otherwise, all his efforts would have been in vain. Unfortunately, His ancestors' actions were extremely secretive. A ruler who was not secretive would lose his subjects, and a subject who was not secretive would lose his chastity. His ancestor was well versed in this. His actions were silent, but once he took action, it would be as powerful as a thunderbolt. Now, it seemed like his ancestors' actions were ruthless, accurate, and steady. His methods were truly brilliant. After the Tang family made their move, he lured the golden dragon away before jumping out. It could be said to be foolproof. Otherwise, if they had acted rashly and lured the golden dragon, it would have been difficult for them to escape. The 20 celestial beings could be lured away by the Outland, but the 20 of them did not have such an escape method. Joe Dunley's gaze was as cold as ice as he slowly looked at the 20 people. Finally, his gaze fell on a purple-faced old man. Peng Hui, I didn't expect to see you here. You were the one who broke the formation, right? The purple-faced old man cupped his fists in shame and sighed. Brother Zhou, please forgive me. I had no choice but to do this. It involves the sect, so I can only put aside my personal feelings. Zhou Dunley laughed coldly and said, In this world, only you know the secret of Celestial Attraction Mountain's formation. I never expected that it would be you who led people to attack the mountain. This old man was really blind. Zhou Dunley was extremely vexed. Back when he was still young, he met Peng Hui when he went down the mountain to train. The two of them traveled the world together and entered many dangerous situations. Their friendship grew through adversity. Once, when they were drinking, the two of them exchanged pointers on formations. When they got excited, they chatted a little more. These few words touched on the secret of Celestial Attraction Mountain's formation. Although it was only a superficial knowledge, it was enough for Peng Hui. As expected, Peng Hui still found the weakness of Celestial Attraction Mountain's formation. From there, he easily broke the formation and brought people in. Their decades of deep friendship ended up being betrayal. Zhou Dunley's emotions were very complicated. He wanted nothing more than to cut Peng Hui down with his sword. Peng Hui sighed. Brother Zhou, this time, our 7 major sects have joined forces to destroy Celestial Attraction Mountain. Brother Zhou, you should return to the Outland and never come back. If that's the case, you'll spare my life? Zhou Dunley laughed coldly. Peng Hui nodded lightly. Our goal is not you, Brother Zhou. It's Celestial Attraction Mountain. Zhou Dunley said, You want me to kill myself and return to the Outland, right? Yes. Peng Hui sighed. Zhou Dunley laughed. I really have to thank you for your kindness, Peng Hui. All right, I've experienced the 7 major sects tactics today. I didn't expect you to be so bold. I'm impressed. Truly smile. Master, they usually don't have the guts, but with the arrival of Senior Celestial Being, they've naturally become bolder. Leave these despicable people who want to kick you when you're down to me. Master, you can watch from the side. Very well. Zhou Dunley looked at him deeply. Chapter 1798. Chu took a step forward and pressed his hand on the hilt of his sword. Suddenly, a sharp sword aura engulfed the entire area. The 20 people bore the brunt of the sword aura's attack. The 18 celestial beings' Deva fields merged into one and blocked the Sky Killer's sword aura. Chu calmly looked at the 20 people and said, You came to Goddess Attraction Mountain to destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain. I wonder which sect will replace Goddess Attraction Mountain after it is destroyed? You don't have to ask. An old man with 3 wisps of beard stroked his beard and smiled. It won't be too late to talk about this after Goddess Attraction Mountain is destroyed. Truly, are you trying to stall for time and wait for the golden dragon to return? Truly smiled. You really saw through me. Are you the celestial being from Stargazing Pavilion? I'm Du Yifeng. The old man stroked his beard and smiled. I'm a disciple of Stargazing Pavilion. Chu slowly nodded. The disciples of Stargazing Pavilion have always been scheming. They use the other sects as swords. I'm impressed. Chu, you don't have to sow discord. The other sects are here because they're dissatisfied with your mountain's tyranny. They have been forcefully occupying the enlightened master's position. As long as Goddess Attraction Mountain is not destroyed, the other sects will never be able to become enlightened masters. Du Yifeng shook his head. You don't have to waste time. It's better to act as soon as possible. If that's the case, I'll send you all to heaven, Chu Li said. As he finished, he slowly drew his sword. Don't let him draw his sword, Du Yifeng shouted. Otherwise, you won't be able to stop him. More than 10 white lights shot out at an incredible speed. Chu Li did not move and did not dodge. Bam, 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 bam. Amidst the continuous explosions, Chu Li's white robe fluttered as if he was in a strong wind. He took 10 steps back. More than 10 white lights fell on him. Without dodging, he took 10 steps back to dissipate the force. His white robe was still the same as before. The expressions of the 20 masters changed slightly. The Sky Killer was unsheathed and slowly slashed across Du Yifeng's neck, cutting off his head. Then, it continued to cut off the heads of the other 3 Taoist-robed elders before returning the sword to its scabbard. He returned the sword to its scabbard. Du Yifeng and the 4 celestial beings turned into white lights and shot into the sky, entering the slowly appearing light door. Everyone felt as if they had just woken up from a nightmare. After the killing heaven sword was unsheathed, it was as if they were bound by an invisible force, unable to move at all. They could only watch as the snow-white killing heaven sword slowly slashed over, chopping off their heads. This feeling of being like lambs waiting to be slaughtered was something they abhorred, and fear arose in their hearts. Heaven Killing Sword. An old man's expression changed greatly. Song Wuji's Heaven Slaughtering Sword. Another old man shouted in a deep voice. Everyone's expression changed. They had heard that Chu Li understood the Sky Killing Sword, but they did not really believe it because the Sky Killing Sword consumed one's lifespan. Even someone as tyrannical as Song Wuji had to ascend to heaven after using the Sky Killing Sword because his lifespan was exhausted. Chu Li was still young, and his cultivation level was far from Song Wuji's back then. Back then, martial arts were still flourishing in the world, and the number of enlightened masters was far greater than what it was now. The enlightened masters back then were also far superior to the enlightened masters of today. Therefore, even if Chu Li had cultivated to become an enlightened master, even if he knew how to use the Heaven Regicide Sword, he would not dare to use it easily. Even if he did, he would not have the strength to use it twice, so they had nothing to fear. They had seen the famous Sky Killing Sword before, but they had never personally experienced it. Only after experiencing it firsthand did they realize how terrifying it was, and they immediately wanted to retreat. Hey, Chu Li, you can still use the second sword? Someone shouted. Everyone's intention to retreat was gone, and they immediately attacked with all their might. Chu Li held the Sky-Killing Sword in his hand, like a reef in the face of a raging storm, unmoving. He realized that hurting the opponent's soul would consume a lot of his lifespan. Unless he had a deep hatred like Tang Su, he could not be bothered to destroy these Devis souls. Bam, 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 bam. Chu Li looked at them calmly and retreated step by step to dissipate the force. His white robe fluttered, and his body was unharmed. The supreme titanium indestructible body and the heaven-killing technique stacked on top of each other, becoming more and more astonishing. Everyone's expression turned ugly. They did not expect Chu Li to be so difficult to deal with. His attack was shocking, and so was his defense. He calmly withstood the wild attacks of more than 10 people without batting an eye. They did not stop attacking, but they became more and more desperate, and their hearts continued to sink. An elder shouted. He's stalling for time to accumulate energy for the second sword. Everyone put in more effort. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone came to a realization and activated their secret skills. Their bodies shone with brilliance, stacking together to form a pool of light. It was so dazzling that no one dared to look at it directly. Among the crowd, Li Xinghe retreated to the side and did not participate in the battle. He was originally dragged here by the elder ancestor to broaden his horizons. Li Xinghe was the future of Stargazing Pavilion and the next pavilion leader. The elder ancestor was trying hard to push him to become an enlightened master and change the status of Stargazing Pavilion. However, A Devis-like elder ancestor Du was killed by Chu Li with one sword. This was a scene that he had never imagined. Even elder ancestor Du probably did not. Because Chu Li had the heaven's power compass, even a Devis like elder ancestor, Du could not predict Chu Li's fate. Otherwise, he would have stayed far away from Chu Li to avoid this fatal disaster. At this moment, it seemed that his decision back then was wise and sensible. Chu Li held the sky-killing sword and slowly stepped forward. With each step, he got closer to the Devis. His white robe fluttered, and his expression was calm, as if he was taking a stroll in a courtyard. Only his eyes were bright, like an eagle looking down at its prey. His gaze swept across the Devis, sending chills down their spines. They were secretly indignant, but could not help but feel sorrowful. As Devis, they had never expected such a situation. Initially, they thought that after coming to this world, as long as they did not encounter other Devis of a higher rank, they would be invincible against the people of this world. They would have a strong sense of superiority. However, they did not expect to encounter a monster like Chu Li. As Chu Li's footsteps approached them, they attacked even more ferociously and unleashed their ultimate skills. Streaks of colorful lights shot toward Chu Li with astonishing power. However, when these rays of brilliance touched Chu Li's body, they were immediately annihilated like sparks falling into water. The closer Chu Li got, the more desperate they became. However, their years of fighting made them unusually valiant. Despair and fear turned into madness, and they fought even harder. Chu Li shook his head and unsheathed the sky-killing sword again. Swoosh! 4 heads flew up again. Then, 4 rays of brilliance shot into the sky and disappeared into the light door. Chu Li sheathed his sword and calmly looked at the remaining 10 Devis. They rushed toward Chu Li in a frenzy. They no longer attacked with inner energy and wanted to use their physical strength to push him. Chu Li's azure blue eyes flashed, and 3 god-punishing thunder swords shot out. The Devis fell into a state of madness. Although they looked valiant in this state, they had lost their calmness and firmness. This was a good opportunity for Chu Li to take advantage of the situation. The god-punishing thunder swords could be used. Bam, bam, bam. 3 figures flew out and remained motionless after landing on the ground. You? An elder hissed. What kind of insidious martial art is this? Chu Li could not be bothered to speak and shot out another 3 god-punishing thunder swords. Bam, bam, bam. Another 3 figures flew out and fell to the ground motionlessly. They were already dead. The remaining 5 Devis turned to leave, but found themselves bound again. When they turned back, they saw Chu Li had pulled out the Sky Killer Sword and was leisurely slashing at them. Under their despairing gazes, the Sky Killer Sword slashed across their necks, and 4 heads flew up. Chu Li sheathed his sword and looked at Li Xinghe and Peng Hui with a faint smile. Li Xinghe hurriedly gave a fist salute. "Congratulations, Brother Chu." Chu Li snorted. "Brother Li is smart. Should I spare your life this time?" Chapter 1799. Li Xinghe was dressed in green robes. He calmly gave a fist salute. "Life or death, it's up to you." Chu Li shook his head and laughed. "Great bearing. Come with me. We'll have a good chat before deciding your life or death." Li Xinghe gave him a fist salute and followed him up the mountain. Chu Li gave Dong Jianxin a look, indicating that they should go together. Dong Jianxin shook his head. He looked curiously at Peng Hui and then at Zhou Dunli, wondering how his master would deal with this Peng Hui. He could tell that this Peng Hui had a deep friendship with his master, but he had betrayed his master by leading people to break through the formation. He was furious and wanted to see how his master would kill this Peng Hui. Chu Li shook his head helplessly. This senior brother of his was really simple-minded. Dong Jianxin stared at Peng Hui with bright eyes. Peng Hui exchanged a look with Zhou Dunli and smiled bitterly. "Brother Zhou, I have a favor to ask." "You flatter me," Zhou Dunli said coldly. Peng Hui sighed. "I have a grandson, Peng Shiji. He is truly a talented and outstanding person, Not inferior to your disciple Chu Li. Zhou Dunli frowned. Peng Hui said, but no matter how talented he is with your goddess attraction mountain, he will never be able to become an enlightened master. You betrayed me because of him? Zhou Dunli frowned. Peng Hui nodded slowly. If not for this, how could I have acted against these fellows' instigation and threats? Fine, I'd like to see this brat. Zhou Dunli snorted. Peng Hui smiled. I'll leave Shiji to Brother Zhou in the future. Take care of him in my stead, for the sake of our friendship. No need. Zhou Dunli waved his hand. Go, I'll let it go this time. Peng Hui smiled. I knew Brother Zhou would do that. Zhou Dunli snorted. For the sake of our friendship, I can forgive you this time. But next time, we won't talk about friendship. There won't be a next time. Peng Hui shook his head and pointed at his heart. I can't tolerate betraying our friendship, so I took the 5 blight before coming. 5 blight. Zhou Dunli frowned. Are you crazy? Peng replied. If Brother Zhou dies, I will accompany you. If Brother Zhou lives, I will leave my grandson in your care. I will be leaving first. Zhou Dunli took a step forward and grabbed his wrist, probing it with inner force. His expression changed slightly. You really don't want to live anymore? Yes. Peng Hui sighed softly. I wonder if Brother Zhou will forgive me this once? No. Zhou Dunli shook his head. Peng Hui, however, revealed a childlike smile. Brother Zhou, do you know that the happiest days of my life were when we joined forces to roam the world? At that time, we were carefree and unfettered. We killed the bad guys we saw and intervened in the injustice we saw. We were willful and heroic. How carefree. Zhou Dunli remained unmoved. Peng Hui let out a sigh. Sparring in martial arts, sparring in formations, talking about the world, thinking about the future. Who would have thought that you would become the master of Goddess Attraction Mountain, and I would become an elder of Greater One Palace? Zhou Dunli sighed inwardly. The world was indeed unpredictable. When they first came to me, I was struggling. In the end, I couldn't overcome my heart and sided with my grandson. Peng Hui's face quickly turned ashen. Yellow spots appeared on the back of his hand. These yellow spots rapidly expanded and eventually covered his entire body. Then, his skin quickly festered and emitted a foul smell. A gust of wind blew and his hair rustled down. His bald head also quickly festered. After the skin was his flesh and blood, which quickly festered like wax melting. Peng Hui sighed with some difficulty. But after betraying Brother Zhou, I also gave up on the idea of staying in this world. Before I left, I consumed the 5 blight. Now it has entered my internal organs. Even the gods can't save me. 5 blight. Zhou Dunli sighed. Why did you do this? Wouldn't it be better to cut your own throat with a sword? Why suffer so much? The skin and flesh on Peng Hui's face had already festered, revealing white bones. His expression could not be seen, but his eyes were calm and unperturbed. There was no struggle or madness when he was in pain. He calmly faced death. The veins on Zhou Dunli's right hand bulged. In the end, he did not make a move. The 5 blight was named after the 5 blight of the heavens. It was a rare poison in the world. Enlightened masters would almost never be poisoned because they had a keen intuition for danger. As soon as the poison approached, they could detect it. It could not be hidden, even if it was a compound poison. Enlightened masters could be considered immune to poison. However, there were always exceptions. The 5 blight was a poison that enlightened masters could not resist. It came from the Outland. It was condensed by the spiritual energy of the Outland and refined with the accuracy of the Outland's alchemy. Even the high-level celestials of the Outland could not resist this poison. It was even more difficult for the enlightened masters of this world. Peng Hui could no longer speak. He stared at Zhou Dunli calmly. Like wax melting, he festered bit by bit. After 2 hours, there was finally only a white skeleton left. Finally, a light shot into the sky. The divine gate slowly appeared. After it opened, he stood outside the gate and gave a fist salute before turning around and entering. Zhou Dunli did not return the fist salute. He just watched him enter the divine gate calmly. Master, Dong Jianxin said with some dissatisfaction. You forgave him just like that? What do you think? Zhou dumbly asked calmly. Dong Jianxin could not tell whether he was happy or angry, but he never cared about this. He always spoke according to his heart, no matter what the other person's expression was, even if it was his master Zhou Dunli. If he died like this, he could still live in the Outland and meet Master. What's the difference between that and not dying? Dong Jianxin snorted. Isn't it too easy for him? Then what do you think we should do? Zhou Dunli asked. Dong Jianxin thought for a moment. We should kill him with our own hands to vent our hatred. He took the 5 blight. The pain he suffered was 100 times more painful than being killed with a sword. Moreover, going to the Outland at this time is a difficult task. Zhou Dunli shook his head. Jianxin, help me do one thing. Master, please tell me. Dong Jianxin said. Zhou Dunli said, go to the Great One Palace and bring Pang Shi here. Ah. Dong Jianxin was startled and said hurriedly, Master, you want to bring his grandson to our goddess attraction mountain? Yes. Zhou Dunli nodded slowly. Why, do you have an idea? Master, Dong Jianxin said, I don't think it's appropriate. Why is it inappropriate? Zhou Dunli snorted, his face darkening. Dong Jianxin said, he is Pang Hui's grandson after all. Pang Hui died in our hands, so he is considered an enemy. Moreover, he is a disciple of the Great One Palace. What is the point of coming to our mountain? Now that the world is in chaos, staying at Goddess Attraction Mountain is safer and cultivation is faster. Zhou Dunli said, since he is a genius, then give him a good environment and see how far he can grow. And then wait for him to take revenge on Goddess Attraction Mountain. Dong Jianxin said, Master, if he really is a genius like Junior Brother, the threat to our Goddess Attraction Mountain is not small. Isn't there still your Junior Brother? Zhou Dunli said. Dong Jianxin said, then why bother making an enemy for Junior Brother? If he is really that powerful, I can't beat him. What if he kills me? Chapter 1800. Dong Jian said in his heart, Master, we have to be on guard. If you don't want to be killed by him, then you have to work hard. Zhou Dunli said. He was friends with Pang Hui, so how could he not care about his grandson? Otherwise, he would not have the face to see him in the heavens beyond heaven. Dong Jianxin shook his head. Master, I don't want to go. Why don't you let Junior Brother go? Zhou Dunli's face darkened as he stared at him. Dong Jianxin felt uncomfortable being stared at, and hurriedly said, I'm afraid I'll lose face if I go to Great One Palace. Why doesn't Master let Junior Brother go? I'm afraid that your Junior Brother will attack directly. Zhou Dunli snorted. Dong Jianxin smiled. Since Master knows that Junior Martial Brother won't agree, why did you have to let Pang Shi come over? Just ignore him. Looks like my words don't work. Zhou Dunli snorted. Dong Jianxin sighed helplessly. All right, I'll go. Only then did Zhou Dunli smile. Chuli brought Li Xinghe up to a gazebo. 3 women stood in the gazebo, their white clothes fluttering in the wind. Their eyebrows were tightly furrowed, and their beautiful faces were filled with worry. When they saw him return, they all heaved a sigh of relief, and their eyebrows relaxed. Chuli rushed into the gazebo and shook his head with a smile. It's quiet now. Nothing major happened. A lot of people died, right? The 3 women could see the brilliance that shot from the Goddess Attraction mountain into the sky. The light door was faintly discernible in the sky above the hidden fairy mountain. One after another, celestial beings and grandmasters entered. Chuli smiled. A few dozen. Xiaoshi scoffed. Chuli replied, more or less, but there's no one left now. Li Xinghe cupped his fists and bowed to the 3 ladies before sitting down. Xiao Qi and Lu Yurong served the tea, then the 3 ladies retreated. Chuli took a sip of tea, put down the porcelain teacup, and slowly sized up Li Xinghe. Li Xinghe forced himself to remain calm as he sipped his tea. He seemed to be on a journey and didn't meet Chu Feng's gaze. After looking at Li Xinghe for a while, Chuli said, I want to know what Du Yifeng brought down from the Outland. Master Du? Li Xinghe was startled and slowly shook his head. Nothing much. Chuli chuckled. That's not right, is it? Li Xinghe hurriedly said, I really didn't bring anything. Heavens beyond heaven's rules are very strict. It's almost impossible to bring down items from heavens beyond heaven. Didn't you bring any mystical arts or secret skills? Chu Li asked calmly. Li Xinghe shook his head. It's not like we can cultivate the Grandmaster's martial arts. What's the point of bringing it along? But what if they didn't bring down martial arts from Grandmasters, but martial arts from the mortal world? Chu Li chuckled. For example, the heavenly astral jade stamp. Li Xinghe hurriedly shook his head after a moment of shock. I've never heard of this before. Chu Li pointed at him and sighed. He's not telling the truth. Li Xinghe was secretly alarmed. He did not expect Chu Li to know such a secret. This was definitely a top secret of the Stargazing Pavilion. Perhaps only 2 or 3 people knew about it, including himself, who was valued the most. Chu Li grinned and said, There's more than one heavenly astral jade chapter, right? Li Xinghe smiled. Where did Brother Chu hear this news? What do you think? Chu Li smiled. Li Xinghe's mind raced, but he still had no clue. He was the only one in the world who knew about this. Grandmaster Du Yifeng and the pavilion leader would never divulge this information. Grandmaster Du wouldn't either, and he wouldn't either. So how did Chu Li know about it? He increasingly felt that Chu Li was unfathomable. Could it be that he could calculate this with the help of the Tiangang compass? Chu Li asked, Is the heavenly astral jade stamp divided into 2 or 3 parts? It should be 2 parts, Li Xinghe replied. He vaguely felt that Chu Li might know bits and pieces of it, but he could not deduce everything. He only had a rough idea, which was why Chu Li wanted to ask him. Since that was the case, he had to say something. Otherwise, Chu Li would turn hostile and kill him. Chu Li nodded slowly. Where's the second part? It seems to be 100,000 hills. Li Xinghe frowned. It said that a senior from the Stargazing Pavilion entered 100,000 hills and left with the heavenly astral jade stamp. Since then, his whereabouts were unknown and the heavenly astral jade stamp was lost outside. We didn't know about this, and it was Grandmaster Du who brought it back. Chu Li chuckled and stared at him. Li Xinghe looked at Chu Li calmly and said, This is the pavilion's most important secret. I've revealed it to Brother Chu as a token of my apology. How about that? You're not sincere. Chu Li smiled and sized him up for a moment before shaking his head and sighing. Looks like we're not on the same path after all. Hold on, Li Xinghe hurriedly said. Forget it. I'll tell you the truth. He could see that Chu Li's killing intent was surging. If Chu Li really wanted to kill him, a wise man would not fight when the odds were against him. If Chu Li really went to the Grandmaster's boundary, he would be at a great disadvantage. He vaguely knew a little about the Grandmaster's boundary and knew that there were different situations for Grandmasters who entered the Grandmaster's boundary. After reaching the end of their lifespan, they would enter the Outland and become a celestial being with better aptitude. If they died suddenly, the earlier they died, the worse their aptitude would be after becoming a celestial being. The later they died, the better their aptitude would be. If he died suddenly and entered the Outland, he would only become a mediocre celestial being. Even if he could directly enter the Stargazing Pavilion in the Outland, he would only be a mediocre disciple. The sect might not be willing to pay a huge price to improve his aptitude. Naturally, he was unwilling to accept this and did not want to die so early. Chu Li looked at him with a faint smile. As far as I know, the other part of the Heavenly Star Jade Stamp is hidden in the Longevity Cult. Li Xinghe said slowly. It's a pity that the people of the Longevity Cult don't know the mysteries of divination. They're casting pearls before swine. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Li Xinghe hurriedly said, It's true. That Heavenly Star Jade chapter was snatched by Song Wuji. Chu Li laughed and said, It won't be like what happened today, right? The disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion provoked people to attack the Changshan sect. No, Li Xinghe revealed a bitter expression. He had heard from Ancestral Master Du what had happened back then. The disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion had instigated the heaven gods to attack the Changshan sect and wanted to destroy the Changshan sect. In fact, it was also for the Heavenly Star Jade Stamp. Song Wuji had snatched the Heavenly Star Jade Stamp from a disciple of the Stargazing Pavilion, which had infuriated the Stargazing Pavilion. That was why they had launched this siege. Unfortunately, they had failed to eliminate Song Wuji. Instead, they had been killed by Song Wuji. The heavenly deities besieged Song Wuji in order to snatch the heaven-killing sword, to snatch the treasure artifact. Everyone had their own desires, so they had worked together. In the end, they had failed at the last moment and were too ashamed to tell others. Following the death of the heaven gods, this incident had been washed away by the river of time. Very few people knew the truth. However, the scene today was very similar to the one back then. The only difference was that the heaven gods had been replaced by the heaven men, and Song Wuji had been replaced by Chu Li. After this, no one would dare to covet Goddess Attraction Mountain anymore, unless it was those heaven men of a higher rank or a Jura of a higher rank. Chu Li slowly said, "The Changshan sect is really fated with them. You're looking for the heavenly star, Jade Stamp?" Li Xinghe became spirited. Chu Li said, "Since I've obtained one, I want to see the second one." He wanted to strengthen the heavenly star insight technique. Only a stronger heavenly star insight technique could decipher the mystery of the heart of Azura. The second one is 10 times more powerful than the first one, Li Xinghe hurriedly said. Chu Li said, "If I obtain it and you do well, I might pass it on to you." Chapter 1801. Although Li Xinghe agreed, he knew that there was no hope at all. How could a study like the heavenly astral jade stamp be passed on to an outsider? It was like giving away the heaven's retribution sword to an outsider. It was the dumbest thing to do. How could a smart person like Chu Li do that? There was no way he would pass it on to himself. However, since he had said so, he naturally had to pretend to believe him under such circumstances. Chu Li smiled. "It seems like you don't believe me." "Of course I do." Li Xinghe said, "Brother Chu, your breadth of mind is different from ordinary people. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lived until today." Chu Li shook his head and could not help but laugh. "You could be soft and hard at the same time. I'm really worried." Li Xinghe smiled. "No matter how strong I am, I'm not Brother Chu's match. Moreover, I won't make an enemy out of Brother Chu." Sigh. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. He thought of his master, Zhou Dunli. Being betrayed by his best friend, that must be a terrible feeling. "I hope so, but brotherly, remember, the next time you offend me, I'll send you straight to the Grandmaster's boundary." Rumble. "Many thanks, Brother Chu." Li Xinghe heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Li waved his hand. "It's not peaceful in the fairies' capital. Brotherly, you should return to the imperial residence as soon as possible." "I'll make a trip back to the stargazing pavilion before returning to the king's mansion," said Li Xinghe. Chu Li nodded, closed fist saluted, and gently pushed his palm out. Li Xinghe immediately flew up and shot out like a rock. He flew further and further away until he vanished without a trace. Co Shur arrived gracefully and frowned. This Li Xinghe is part of the attack on Goddess Attraction Mountain. Xiao Qi and Lu Yurong also arrived gracefully, their clothes fluttering in the wind. The two girls also looked at him curiously. Chu Li nodded lightly and told him everything that had happened. Within the light palace, Sun Mingyue, dressed in white, was reading files behind a table. Her graceful body didn't move. Only her eyes moved. She glanced over the file and then moved on to the next one. Time seemed to have stopped flowing at this moment. The entire hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The sound of light footsteps broke the silence. Li Ming hopped in with her deerskin shoes. As soon as she came in, she called out, "Master." Sun Mingyue put down the file and looked over. Li Ming's face was filled with excitement. She was beaming with joy. "Master, have you heard about it?" "What?" Sun Mingyue opened the other scroll and asked casually. Li Ming said, "News from Martial Uncle Chu." "Oh," Sun Mingyue calmly said, "What news?" "Master's Junior Chu fought against the 7 great sects of Fu Dynasty and the Emperor of Fu Dynasty." Li Ming danced with joy as she shouted. The Celestials of the 7 major sects have set foot on Goddess Attraction Mountain, and even Fu Dynasty's Emperor, Tang Su. They're going to take advantage of the fact that Goddess Attraction Mountain's master is heavily injured to add insult to injury. They're going to take advantage of the situation and destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain. Destroy the immortal Attraction Mountain? Sun Mingyue chuckled and shook her head. Li Meng said, I heard that Mountain Lord Zhou was heavily injured in the realm beyond heaven. He needs to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time to recover. Moreover, the golden dragon protecting Goddess Attraction Mountain is also injured, so Goddess Attraction Mountain is at its weakest. And then? Sun Mingyue asked. Li Meng immediately became even more excited as she said, I didn't expect Goddess Attraction Mountain to be protected by 2 golden dragons. Then, another golden dragon appeared and killed the Fu dynasty's emperor, the patriarch who descended from the sky beyond heaven. It also killed the 20 celestials gathered by the Tang clan's patriarch. Sun Mingyue nodded thoughtfully. This was actually nothing surprising. Every sect had a trump card, and it seemed that the other golden dragon of Goddess Attraction Mountain was the trump card. It was indeed powerful enough. Li Meng continued, those celestials were very powerful. I think they used some kind of secret skill to escape. The golden dragon chased after them, and then the celestial patriarchs of the other 7 sects of the Fu dynasty appeared. Sun Mingyue nodded slightly. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Li Meng clapped her hands and said, That's right. Those people are very powerful. Hee. But Master Junior Chu is even more powerful. Chu Li made his move? Sun Mingyue asked with interest. Li Meng nodded vigorously. Master Junior Chu drew his sword and killed all of them with one swing of his sword. There were 20 celestials, and they were all celestial patriarchs of the 7 major sections. Even when they joined forces, Master Junior Chu killed them all with one swing of his sword. A smile appeared on Sun Mingyue's cold face. He's indeed extraordinary. It's more than extraordinary. From now on, no celestial patriarch would dare to disrespect Master Junior Chu. Li Meng said excitedly. Sun Mingyue smiled. I hope so. Li Meng said. Master Junior Chu displayed such a powerful sword technique. Are there still people who are ignorant enough to provoke him? Who can see past fame and fortune? Those who think that their cultivation level is high and want to be famous all want to defeat him, Sun Mingyue said plainly. For now on, he's everyone's target. Then we'll see who can defeat Master Junior Chu. Li Meng scoffed. Sun Mingyue smiled and shook her head. Li Meng said, Master, will Master Junior Chu come over these few days? He won't, Sun Mingyue said. Li Meng was displeased. Why won't he come? He's very busy, Sun Mingyue said plainly. If you have nothing better to do, go back and cultivate the Great Light Scripture a few more times. Yes. Li Meng immediately lowered her head listlessly. At this moment, she really wanted to meet Chu Li and witness his glory. She already knew that Chu Li was powerful, but she did not expect him to be this powerful. Killing enlightened masters, celestials, and asuras was not considered powerful. However, killing 20 celestials from the 7 major sects in one go was completely different. The celestials from the 7 major sects must be far more powerful than ordinary celestials. At this moment, Chu Li had transformed into Bailey Na. His body grew taller and more muscular, and his face became older. He was like a vigorous pine tree standing at the foot of the floating mountain, looking up at the sky. He raised his voice and shouted, Disciple Bailey Na requests an audience with the bishop. His shout displayed his profound cultivation level. It echoed in the valley and spread far. After the shout, there was no movement. Chu Li frowned and raised his voice again. Bailey Na greets the bishop. A person suddenly appeared in front of him. It was Lu Jun. Lu Jun looked at Chu Li with a strange gaze. Chu Li Fist saluted and smiled. Brother Lu, long time no see. Elder Bailey, where have you been? Lu Jun stared at him with bright eyes. Chu Li immediately smiled. Thanks to the bishop, I've been in isolated cultivation for a period of time. My martial arts have improved greatly. Isolated cultivation? Lu Jun frowned. Where did you do it? A valley near startling Goose Mountain, Chu Li said. After I came out of isolated cultivation, I realized that our floating mountain had disappeared. I finally followed Brother Lu's mark and found this place. You? Lu Jun finally believed Chu Li. In the beginning, he suspected that Chu Li was a traitor and had already betrayed the floating mountain. Otherwise, Chu Li would have appeared when the floating mountain gathered the disciples. Chu Li was 100,000 hills then and did not receive the message. He missed the opportunity to return. However, he did not want to abandon the identity of Bailey Na. He chose to return as Bailey Na instead of directly breaking into the floating mountain. He guessed that there should be celestials hiding in the floating mountain at this time. It was impossible that Song Wuji did not send celestials to guard the floating mountain to prevent the Church of Longevity from being robbed by the celestials who descended to the mortal world. The Church of Longevity had many treasured weapons. Chu Li smiled. Brother Lu, did I come back late? Yes. Lu Jun patted his shoulder. If you didn't come back, everyone would have thought that you were dead. My old bones are very hard. I won't die so easily. Chu Li smiled. Let's go. Follow me to see the bishop, Lu Jun said. The two of them leaped into the valley at the side and appeared on the floating mountain. Chu Li felt a sense of familiarity. He sighed and took a deep breath. He smiled and looked like he was longing for something. Lu Jun smiled as if he was in her shoes. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.